We're recording. All right. Hello, gentlemen. Thank you for coming to week 11 of the Banner Mentorship. If you can all please open up the PowerPoint so we can get started. All right. Anatomy trains. Okay, so before we talk about anatomy trains, guys, I'm just going to quickly pull this over here so you guys can all see the whiteboard behind me. All right, so we've gone over a few concepts during the course of this mentorship, right? And those concepts have taught us a lot about everything from glucose regulation to simple concepts of kinesiology and how muscle can either be balanced and integrated toward better function or become imbalanced through adaptation of environmental stimulus and cause a whole cascade of unwanted problems, like ranging from neurologically degenerative problems down to gastro-degenerative problems. So the incidence can range far and wide as to what the body has to contend with when it's not in a state of harmony. Now, in the last few mentorships, we discussed the role of the autonomic nervous system and what it pertains to in heart rate variability. We also discussed hemispherical asymmetry and what that really means in terms of how the brain not only gathers information but processes it and allows for orchestration of the information to occur to our periphery. Right. So with that having been said, I was going to do a little bit of a recap so we can all get on the same page as to how important today's module really is, okay? Anatomical trains are extremely important to understand for the fact that they are probably the easiest component to manipulate instantly toward a given therapeutic outcome. All right, hello, Rian. Now, the thing about therapy and the thing about homeostasis or an optimal physiological position that we need to consider are three major nets. All right, we've covered this in other modules as well, but I didn't mention it in the PDF. I'm sure you guys haven't had a chance to read it because I only sent it today. But the PDF is 20 pages long. And it's the longest PDF out of all the modules for a reason. And that reason is that this module is the most practically viable of all the modules that we're going to have gone over. All right, so the crossover that you'll be able to take from this week's mentorship, you'll be able to apply it to your clients within the gym instantaneously. Now, there's one thing to consider behind that. The quicker the change, the less dramatic the long-term outcome will be. Okay, so what do I mean by that? We have three nets. Let's first cover that. What are the three nets? Rian? Rian?
Let me just unmute. It's the neural net.
Okay, one second. Let's make sure this one works. Sorry, some of them have dried out. Yep. Okay, so we have the neural net. That's right.
And then the fascial net.
So write them in different colors. One second. Sorry, guys. I've been using this whiteboard so extensively over the last. See if this works. No, dried out as well. I have to buy a new pack of whiteboard markers. Right. No.
Ga je lekker bij maken, schat. Ga je lekker bij maken.
Okay, so we have a neural net. Right, we have the fascial net. Yes, Ariane?
The third one is slipped my mind now.
Circulatory.
Circulatory, yes, I knew it was with the C.
Okay, awesome. All right, so let's talk about these three nets first. Firstly, neural net. Okay, so it pertains to the what? The nervous system, right? So we have CNS to PNS and back again. Okay, so how the periphery integrates receipt of information to orchestration of the information, and once again, receipt of the orchestration itself. Does that make sense, guys? So how do we gather information from our environment, how we process that information from our environment, and what outcomes can be seen through our periphery, through the processing that happens in our central nervous system. Okay, so that's in a nutshell what the neural net pertains to. Fascial net, what does that pertain to, guys? What do you think?
Fascia.
Okay, but give us an
Fascia of all
example.
muscles.
No, you're right. You're 100% right, and that's good. But what is that? Well, give us an example. We mentioned there's something, not biomechanics, because biomechanics are two-dimensional. What else did we mention?
Biotensegrity.
Biotensegrity. So fascial net pertains to elements within biotensegrity, which are compression and tension, right? Cool. Circulatory net, what do you think that pertains to, guys, within the scope of the mentorship series?
Blood flow and oxygen flow.
Sorry, Rio?
Nutrition assimilation.
Nutrition is one. What else? But assimilation definitely, that forms part of, well, actually, no, it forms part of something else. Nutrition and what else?
I said biochemistry.
Biochemistry, that's it. Sorry, Rio, yours video just lapsed out for a moment, so I'm not sure if you said it before or not.
Oh, okay, no.
Yeah, you just had to pause in the video there. Okay, so those were those, in a nutshell. Obviously, you can get far more detail than this, but just as a general headline, these are what the three different true holistic nets pertain to, okay? Now, are you with us so far, Hub?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. If I'm going too fast, you guys want me to slow down?
What was the first one? I can't read it.
The neural net. So these are three nets.
Yeah,
so it's neural net.
Yeah.
Yeah, holistic nets. So you have the neural net, and that pertains to how the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system communicate between one another.
And then the second one is the fascial, and the third one is the
circulatory.
Circulatory, okay.
Yeah. And in a nutshell, to give more of an understanding behind what each net really gives value to, the neural net will give value, like I said before, to the central nervous system's communication with the peripheral nervous system. The fascial net would give a value to biotensegrity and elements within biotensegrity itself, and how the elements in biotensegrity can apply to concepts within kinesiology, like inhibition, facilitation, synergistic dominance, reciprocal inhibition, so on and so forth. Okay, and then we have last, circulatory, which can pertain to nutrition and biochemistry, and that includes everything from immunology, so different components of like either innate or adaptive components of immunology, to gastric endocrine function and assimilation of nutrients, to hormones that allow for blood glucose regulation or allow for appetite control or satiation, but they all are related, right? Because hormones that allow for satiation will also have a role to play in the central nervous system. Why? Does anybody remember what I mentioned last week about the ventral medial hypothalamus? So lesions to the ventral medial hypothalamus will cause dissociation to appetite control. In other words, leptin sensitivity will become impaired and ghrelin output may become extreme. All right, so if I were to say if you improve the circulatory net, you would also improve the neural net, because you would have far less stress that cause lesions to that part of the brain to occur. And same, the vice versa of that. If you were able to improve the neural net's functionality, you would also improve the circulatory net's functionality, because the perceived point of satiation would be to the point of not increasing the volume of food required to allow for appetite to become back into control. So you won't have to release as many hormones, as many enzymes, as many immune reactions in order for that nutrition to be absorbed in the first place. And then fascial net, if you change the position of congestion of tissue in one segment within the body, what will happen to another segment of the body that may have an extended amount of tissue or excessively stretched amount of tissue? So locked long as opposed to locked short. So if I were to change the position of a tissue that's locked short, what would happen to tissue that's locked long?
That will change to more tension.
Yes, more active tension, right? Controlled tension. So proprioceptively aware. In other words, there will be more balance between the alpha and gamma motor neuron activity to that tissue itself. All right. So that way it would wouldn't be inhibited, but it wouldn't be excessively facilitated, but it would be able to become inhibited and facilitated during its natural movement cycle. Because all tissue is momentarily facilitated, whilst it's also momentarily inhibited in order for movement to occur. But it's just to the degree of what main variable, the most important variable out of this whole mentorship to consider. What is that variable, guys? Whether it's beneficial or detrimental. Rian? Starts with a T.
It's time, right?
There you go. Hup. Fantastic. Time. So how long the tissue has been compressed for, or how long the tissue has been stretched for, or locked long or locked short. All right. If the time of the tissue's the variable of time to the tissue state has been extreme, adaptation will occur and it will set itself into a new position of awareness. All right. And that a position of awareness causes homeostatic shifts to become not necessarily a positive adaptation. Okay. It's most positive adaptation for the body's perception that it receives of information from the environment, given that you are creating that environment itself or your response to the environment, but it's not necessarily the best possible adaptation for complete and integrative physiology. Right. Now, so that's all cool. We got all the three nets. Now, why is the fascial net so important to understand toward regulation? Why do you guys think? George?
Fascial net, why that would be so important. Could it help the circulatory net indirectly and help nutrient uptake? Could it be the perception, or it could affect the state of the nervous system, and therefore the state of recovery and you know, just everything that goes with that?
So perfect. So it increases nutrient flow. Okay. And it can also increase neural, should we say, call it proprioception. Let's just say proprioception here. Let's say perception, or it's even better, environmental awareness. Right. Everybody in agreement with that? Now, the changes that you can create in all three of the nets, the most dramatic change the most dramatically instantaneous change that can be created is that within the fascial net. However, just remember, it's like a spectrum. All right. So if we say, so the greater the change, okay, the greater the change, the longer the time it takes. So we talk time, okay? The time. So we think about like the neural net. Let's say, for example, the neural net or the circulatory net, we'll say, is right here, okay? So we say circulatory. And you would say like the neural net, just as an example, might be here, and like the fascial net might be here. All right. The neural net, 1.5 liters of blood gets transferred through the heart, circulated through the heart every hour. Okay. All right. The neural net has a speed between 100 and 270 kilometers per hour. Okay, it depends on which segment of the neural net and what type of activity, and whether it's gamma, beta, delta, with the different type of synaptic responses, whether it is unipolar, bipolar, multipolar, multiple factors that would deem it being the lower end or upper end of the spectrum. And then the fascial net has 3 times that, 780 kilometers per hour. And this is the reason why the fascial net is more to do with our subconscious control. All right, so we have now the quicker, the more dramatic a change to the state of a tissue through manual therapy, through through dry needling, acupuncture, whatever it might be that your choice of therapy it might be. The quicker this change of state to that tissue, all right, the likelihood of that tissue resetting back to its former state is much higher. Okay. Now, however, the fascial net is far easier to manipulate than that, say, of the neural net. The neural net has got far more complexes to have to consider. You're not just having to work with the periphery of the neural net, you're also having to work with the central components of the neural net. Okay, so you can think about the neural nets in the peripheral nervous system, and yes, you can alter sensors, and you can change the way the central nervous system receives information. However, it's not just about the receipt, it's also about the orchestration. And the orchestration processes go through complex cycles within the central nervous system itself, which are regulated by everything from neuropeptides to neurotransmitters to other hormones as well. So neural net takes a bit longer to respond in a concrete change of state. All right, but with constant therapy, once you start changing positions of the neural net, you start to change positions within both fascial net and the circulatory net. So it's like in the happy medium, where you kind of like want loads of magic happens if you're able to get true neurological changes, not momentary, but long term. Momentary changes you can influence via therapeutic means as well, and they can have an effect, but it's about the ongoing therapeutic treatment, whether or not those effects would be sustained. Okay, you can't just, like as an example, if I were to release tension in your left pec minor, George, looking at your posture as you see right now, your left pec minor and your coracobrachialis seem to be excessively tight, and your medial scalene on your right arm seems to be more hypertonic, as well as the levator scap on the right side of your shoulder. If I were to release those tissue structures, and I say, okay, George, go ahead, cool, and do your training, more likely you would be injured, because the body has created these compensation patterns to keep you stable. However, if I were to create fascial release of those structures, and I were to also identify certain senses or sensory points within the body that might be overwhelmed or overstimulated, causing the periphery to become tight in those sections and segments, and allow for those senses to subdue their overactive state, and whilst doing that as well, engage actively in low load, low torque threshold movement that can encourage integration of the fascia within the central nervous system once those tension points have been released. Then I say to you, George, go and do a snatch. What do you think is going to happen?
Probably feel pretty good.
Exactly.
How do you identify the tension points?
Oh, we're going to touch on that today. Because remember, this is a 2-hour mentorship. The information that's put for this mentorship, you guys need to go and read these books. I cannot summarize everything for you in one module. It's the PDF I put together, gives you a lot of cool stuff. I've taken 850 pages worth of materials, and I've summarized it. Sorry, I got some berry in my throat. Oh man, it's stuck in my throat. Now summarize it into 20 pages for you. 20 pages for 850 pages worth. So all the critical cool stuff is in there. We'll go over some of it today. I'm not going to be able to go over the whole PDF today with you guys, all right? But I am going to go over some key cool stuff of common points that you guys can consider. But we're going to go about the rules of the game. The rules of the game in anatomy trains is very important to master before you start to apply releases, okay? If you can understand the rules of the game, then you can understand the process, and applying a process is easier than just applying a repetitive cycle or repetitive habit. It's not a habit, it becomes a thought process then, right? And when you involve consciously what you're doing, then you can make these changes ongoing, okay? And that's another thing to consider as well, guys. The body, is it ever going to be in a state of constant influence? Influence of exposure to environmental stasis, influences of its hormonal position. Is it ever going to be in a constant state?
No.
Yeah.
You say yes? You say
Yeah.
no? Okay, tell me, George.
No.
Sorry?
Tell me, George, you say yes. Why do you say yes?
You're saying if it's in a state of constant exposure, surely
No.
because it's...
No, I mean,
Sorry.
is it ever going to stay in a constant physiological state?
Oh, no, for sure not. Sorry, my bad. I thought you meant if it was constantly influenced by stuff.
No, that's all right. You guys are right. So it's never going to stay at a constant point. So even if you do fix a problem today, it's not to say there's not going to be another problem tomorrow. And it's not to say that once you have fixed that problem, a bigger problem might come out as well, all right, that you have to contend with. And then once you fix the bigger problem, the smaller problem might be coming back. So what's the moral of that story?
It's a never-ending nightmare.
Not a nightmare. No, I don't look at it as a nightmare.
It's a continuing process.
Sorry?
It's a daily process you need to go through.
It's a daily process of discovery. And that's cool because you're never ever going to have to worry. Like if you focus all your energy onto one segment within your body, right, and you don't concentrate on what's happening to the other segments in your body whilst treating that one segment, you're just going to set yourself up for more pain because possibly that segment you're treating is actually creating a fail-safe, like a safety point or a safety lock for other structures that are maybe unstable. Okay, so think about, once you fix a problem, you might identify a problem. And this is like, I have had this debate with so many physios and so many sports massage therapists, and I just come to the conclusion, I'm just not going to argue anymore because there's no point. There really isn't. There's no constant state. You can reduce the amount of pain, you can increase the amount of mobility, and you can increase the amount of stability as well. But in order to do those things, it's a constant effort, all right? It's a constant discovery, an opportunity of discovery. But when you start to get lazy and you just go in for the big lifts, not considering exactly how you're performing the lift, not considering how much tempo you are executing behind the lift, not considering the pain or the limits and range that you feel during a lift. Like for Hub and myself, we have very similar patterns, and I can see where Hub's is also coming from. It's coming from his adductor, and potentially he may have had something happen in his abdominal wall at some point in his life, which we'll have to go into a little bit more, or a possible concussion as well that can cause that line. But we're going to go into anatomical lines today, and you'll understand a little bit more about how to look at things. But there's constantly shifting. The fascial lines aren't going to always be centered. Okay, so right now, if I were to do that, I'm centering my position of mass. Okay, but right now, I feel like my one foot is pronating, my one foot is inverting, and another one is everting. Okay, so I feel more tension in one glute and more tension in one adductor. Why? Because my fascial alignment isn't positioned so that all the fascias interconnect into a central position, allowing for optimal energy utilization or energy efficiency. So my brain perceives that as being energetically efficient, which is not. So I have to use more energy to move during the day. But when I do center myself back into this position, and all of a sudden I want to go and, for example, do a bench press. Okay, so when I'm more centered, I can squat heavier, but I can't bench press as much.
Oh, really?
No. Why? Because the ability for me to be able to bench press as much as I was able to do came through a compensatory pattern of compression during certain fascial lines that altered the position or the fulcrum of the movement itself, making me more proficient in accessing the pectorals and the lats, but at the same time, accessing positions within the pectoral lat, myofascial bundles within those muscles, not the entire muscle, within those muscles itself, they got stronger. Not the entire muscle, but the myofascial bundles. And those myofascial bundles got stronger and stronger over time, and I was able to press. I mean, at one stage, I was pressing 190 for 6 on the incline. All right? And it's got videos of me in UP doing that. Yeah, well, don't do it anymore because I'm trying to keep myself balanced. But that's how strong I got with the bench press. But my squat was terrible. Like, I would struggle to get 140 out for the same amount of reps when I was doing 190 in bench. And I was always like, why is this happening? I don't understand. I'm training my legs. Like, and I used to really go for it. I wasn't lazy with legs. And I realized over the years that there's certain structures that have been altered. You know, I've got a perforated stomach ulcer that's been cut right through the linea alba, and the fascial planes, that the abdominal aponeurosis that lies in above and below the rectus abdominis, is a huge play, which we'll go over in the superficial front line, that has a role with the pectorals and the quadriceps. So an alteration within this line, as an example, can actually allow for the thoracic cage to be lifted, but can also cause disassociation in the lower extremities of abdominals, causing the rectus femoris to have to become tighter in order to stabilize the pelvis.
Would that cause basically an like overarch in your lower back?
Could definitely.
Like an excessive arch.
Definitely. Most definitely. Because the abs are pulling up and these aren't giving the support. So, you know, you get compression around the QLs. Glute medius doesn't work as well when the QLs become compressed. So there's a lot of things that can happen. So you can get stronger in one element, so you can fix a problem. The moral of the story is, you can fix a problem today and get stronger in a plane of motion tomorrow. However, if you do not consider all the planes of motion and you excessively expose yourself to that one plane and say, ego, boom, boom, pulls, presses, yeah, eventually you're going to cause more discord around the other fascial planes because of why. Why do you think that is, guys? Why do you think if you have a stronger plane to work with, right? You have created a stronger plane of motion to work with. But in training a stronger plane of motion, you haven't taken into consideration the other planes or the other anatomical trains and how they proceed or intersect with one another to allow all 3 planes of motion to take place: transverse, sagittal, and frontal. Okay, so if you get strong, for example, in the transverse plane or the frontal plane, what's a frontal plane motion, guys? Bench press or squat, predominantly?
Frontal. Is it a squat?
Sagittal, the squat.
Oh, my bad.
That's all right. That's cool. Don't worry. I always get confused with those. I was mentioning before the mentorship, before I actually came out with this one.
I never grasped the planes concept enough to just, you know, bring it back whenever I want. It's just I learned about it and
Okay.
Study it.
Frontal plane. If you think about frontal plane, okay, so what do you think sagittal plane is?
It's like along the lateral part of your body.
Along the lateral part of your body.
Yeah. So it's like that way. And then frontal is that line, like.
And transverse? What's transverse?
Transverse is the one that's like in the middle. It's like split your body in half.
Is it where you're like rotation?
Yeah.
And about rotation? What about rotation? Transverse? Transverse causes transverse rotation.
Yes.
Frontal causes back and forth, pull and push. Sagittal causes compression in and out.
Okay.
Okay.
But is sagittal then also lateral, like moving from side to side?
You mean like this?
Yeah.
Well, yep, it could be. Why?
I'm just wondering.
No, it could be. You're right.
I-
But why? Why?
I'm-
What do you think?
Because there's extension of like hip. I don't know. Like I'm trying to relate hip extension with the squat and pushing to the side.
In order for me to do this, I'm doing what? Abduction and adduction, right?
That's my bad. Not hip,
Abduction.
not extension.
Abduction.
Extension would be frontal, wouldn't it?
Extension? No, extension can also be sagittal
Yeah.
because it's compressing and extending.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
But extension can also be frontal because it's extending, walking forward and walking back.
Mm.
It's rather in taking like a single idea of abduction, adduction, extension, flexion. It's about how the body as a whole moves through movement, goes through planes of movement. So when the body either pulls something toward it or away from it, or it pulls itself towards something or away from something, it's frontal. When the body pulls into itself and out of itself, it's sagittal. When the body pulls around itself, it's transverse.
That's awesome. I never heard it explained like that. That's cool.
Yeah, don't worry. I also, for many years, I'm like, oh, I don't get this. Yeah, so that makes it a bit easier to understand. Okay. Right, so lost train of thought there. Right, so fascial net has the quickest time. It's probably out of all the three nets, it is the one that's most easily influenced. All right, which means it provides a key to unlock the door. I love this analogy. All right, so I'm gonna wrap this off, guys. Okay. 1 second.
Weet je wat ik ga doen straks? Mijn chili con carne schotel. Spek pakken. Extra lekker.
Dan ga ik maar weer even klemmetjes halen.
Ja?
Plastic dingetjes. Ja.
Justin, can we go back to the previous topic you were talking about? We can't hear you, Justin.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, what were you saying? The previous topic?
Oh, yeah, can we go back to the previous topic? You were basically saying that why would you you'll become stronger in one area, but not in another area. That's what you were talking about, and then we just stopped. And it's kind of interesting. I want to know.
Oh, we're going to go into in a great detail. This whole module is about that.
Okay.
The whole module is about that. But I just want you to get that understanding that in order for us to continually adapt toward a positive homeostatic position, it requires ongoing therapy of multiple disciplines. Okay. And so what disciplines do we really know of? Okay, what have we spoken about in this mentorship? Therapeutic disciplines.
Well, there's sports massage, there's chiropractic.
So let's bring it down. So we got kinesiology, right?
Okay.
And then we have functional neurology. And then we have, what's the last one?
Biokinetics.
That's like kinesiology. That is kinesiology.
Something to do with biochemistry? No, I feel it.
Biochemistry.
Biochemistry, yeah.
It's a type of therapy.
That's what I meant, yeah.
Yeah. So 3 different types of therapy that we've worked with. Huh?
I said, yeah, that's what I also meant.
Yeah.
You got it. You got it. Okay, so where were we before? Just remind me before we went to kinesiology.
Saying continual process.
Right, it's a continual process of therapy. All right, so you can influence the position of one's kinesiology by a whole range of therapeutic techniques, ranging from ART to MET to STR to there's NKT. The list goes on. Okay, function neurology, you can utilize PDTR, which is what the other guys do. There are other function neurology practices from guys like Frederick Carrick, which I really look up to, which are also pretty cool to utilize, that don't just work on the periphery, but also work on the central nervous system. And biochemistry, you can utilize a whole, everything from nutrition to nutraceuticals, to hormonal therapy and endocrinological states, huge amount of therapies that can be integrated there. But it's always an ongoing process, okay, between all three of these to get us to the best possible position. It's never going to be the most function. It's never going to be perfect, I say, but it can be the most functional position we can get ourselves into. Always strive for greater functionality, okay? And that's a very important word, is functionality of the system. Okay, it's very important to remember that more than anything else. Okay, striving for the most optimal function that we can have within our body. Okay, so we can do our fascial stuff, which pretty much pertains mostly to this bad boy over here. We can do function neurology, PDTR over there, nutrition, biochemistry. Also over here, kinesiology also goes down to movement as well as function neurology. Diet can also be influence kinesiology through direction of biochemistry. But it's always an ongoing relationship between those three. Now that you guys have that, right? I want to go back to this analogy here. So when we alter the position or the position of our fascial state, okay? So we call this for F. That gives us a key, all right? And through the altering of that fascial state, we unlock certain awareness or proprioception that the brain would have with the periphery, okay? So that can influence momentarily a neurological state of the periphery. Through integrating not only a change of tissue tone, but accessing new degrees of movement, whether it be isometrics or actual flows like calisthenics, into place after having created this key to unlock this lock. And through unlocking the lock, we also take into account how our brain is perceiving a change of that lock. Okay, you must remember, it's not about just putting the key in, it's about turning it around, right? In order to turn the key around successfully, we need to understand how the CNS is communicating with the PNS and back and forth again, okay? So we can create a release. I can say, cool, let's change up the position of the pec minor and the carotid brachialis. Right, the shoulder seems to be a little bit less medially rotated. Now let's see exactly as to how your awareness is working, whether you are facilitated or inhibited, or whether you are successfully inhibiting when you should or successfully facilitating when you should. And Hoop will know about this as well in the PDTR test, how to treat that, and whether or not the sequence is being received properly for momentary inhibition or received properly for momentary facilitation. And must remember, the most important factor is what that determines a positive outcome? Time. Very important, okay? If you inhibit for too long, if you facilitate for too long, it can cause your neurons to either become down-regulated, or you can have a state of neuroexcitation occur, right? What was another phrase for neuroexcitation that we mentioned? There was 3 factors that can influence it last week.
I wasn't there, sorry.
You remember, Rian?
I wasn't there.
You remember Hup? Last week we mentioned it.
No.
Neurological wind-up.
No, it's one.
Okay.
Oh, I was there. What were you talking?
Yeah.
That's from 2 weeks ago, isn't it?
Was it 2 weeks ago? No, it was last week, because we spoke about the autonomic nervous system last week. And we mentioned neurological wind-up. We also mentioned in the week prior to that as well with hemispherical controls too.
Yeah.
We did touch on it
That's
last
right.
week as well.
That's right. I
With
can
the
remember.
autonomic nervous system. So it's neurological wind up. All right. So like you can have, and what can cause neurological wind up? Do you guys remember? The first one I'll give you, NMDA. What's the next one? Is 3.
Transneural degeneration
That's the last one. Yep.
and free radical formation.
Yeah, baby. Okay.
Boom.
So free radical formation. Okay. Cool. So those are the 3 factors that can cause it. So if you have a state of facilitation that comes about, it could be because the central nervous system is overstimulated. It could be that you have excessive amounts of free radicals circulating in the system because you're not able to metabolize energy. You're not able to have an effective and efficient energy metabolism or cycle. So like, for example, the citric acid cycle, you don't have enough nicotinamide, and then NMDA, oh my lord, I can't remember. I forgot that now. It's the components of the citric acid cycle that actually bind to hydrogen ions. It's 2 B vitamins.
I have no idea.
All right, it's within the modules there. It's in the modules, I promise. It's in the content.
Sure. I bet they are too.
Yeah. I can't remember
Sure
that. I can't remember everything off heart, guys. I remember quite a lot, but I can't remember that one now. Anyway, so if you have an inefficiency of going through your natural metabolic cycles that harness and activate energy, as an example, within the citric acid cycle, or transneural degeneration, if you have a hyperexcited system for long periods of time that deplete available nutrients that are required for neurological sequencing to occur. So in other words, you don't have the raw materials required for communication. Right, and then eventually those neurons start to decline or start to degenerate because of the lack of available nutrients required for synaptic influence to occur in the first place. Okay, so that's like facilitation, and then inhibition is like either there's not enough signal coming through, which can also cause transneural degeneration, so not enough synapses. Can either occur because there's excessive free radical formation has caused tissue to become apoptotic, or there's not enough sequencing within the central nervous system with the peripheral nervous system for activity to be, perceived or perceptively found. That can cause inhibition as well. Okay, so we've got positions of facilitation, positions of inhibition that can come about, right, guys? All right, and it's multiple factors. Neurological wind up, which is the concept of that, is one of those factors. Now, going back to what we were mentioning before, what this whole module is about, if we unlock tissue tone, okay, so we see that there's an excessive line of excessive point of myofascia along an anatomical line that's causing obstruction to the entire line or to a corresponding line, and we release that tension within that myofascial bundle, all of a sudden you might find that the structure becomes more settled. However, for the structure to be maintained in its new optimal position, we need to turn the key in the lock. So we need to figure out, is the key actually fitting in that lock? Or is the key just fitting in the lock but is not able to turn the different segments within the lock itself? Okay, so it's not able to actually unlock the lock. It's just able to get into the lock. And how we do that is we assess, once the tissue has been released, you can either assess it by doing simple muscle testing. You don't even have to go into complex PDTR. You do simple muscle testing and see whether or not it's responding in the different planes pertaining to that anatomical line of which you saw that the tissue needed to be released in. And this is what we really need to understand is the anatomical lines. Okay, we're going to go over the anatomical lines today. However, I'm stressing this mentorship is not enough to cover that. Okay, this is just to tease your interest to go into the PDF and research it and read it thoroughly, as well as read the 2 books which I mentioned in the PDF, are of high importance to review. Only through continued study can you become well acquainted with the body to understand in a three-dimensional view what's going on in front of you, or via palpation. Okay, you cannot, like when I see, you ask me, so how do I know what's going on with you, George? You asked me that question before, because I've been doing therapy for almost 6 years. Okay, I've been reading anatomy trains for 8 years. So this is why I can say, okay, George, I can see where your, positions of your bony prominences are. I can see the positions of where your focal point is, the level of the ears, the level of your mandible, how that's affecting the TMJ position, how your temporal lobe is slightly shifted to the one side more than the other. I can see all these things just looking at you. I can see the position of your shoulder, where the chromium is sitting, because I've had the time, not had the time, sorry, because I've invested in the time to read and to apply. Read and apply. And don't just read, okay? This is an online mentorship course. It's really cool. It's to give you insight, to answer questions when you might have a vague idea. But the only way you're going to ever learn practical skills is by getting practical, okay? But in order to get practical, you need to have a theoretical understanding. And this is what this will do for you. Okay, but please, before you go and test any of these ideas out, read the books thoroughly. Don't just take what I'm saying today and say, oh, I'm going to go do this in this client. Because if you do something, there might be tension, in different parts of the body, which we're going to go over. And you go and do a release, or you think you're doing a release, but you're actually not releasing that muscle. You're releasing something, another fascial plane or intersecting plane, because you haven't had enough time to actually learn the difference between how the lines of fascia actually fold or cross over one another, and you release tension in another plane that's actually holding stability to the body, you can injure your client. Okay, so please respect this information. It takes time. Okay, this is not a quick one fix module. It will give you a lot. It will give you a head start, big head start in front of everyone else, but it takes practice, and it takes a lot of practice. Right, so we found out, cool, so there's a neurological link that's accompanying with the fascial link, and then we go to the door, and in this door we can start to apply functional movements, so functional patterns that will encourage global anatomical train awareness. Now, the best medium, in my experience, in which to encourage functional patterns to set after doing therapy, not for hypertrophy, not for strength or anything else. Hypertrophy, strength are the outcomes of a body that's in balance, okay? It should not be the primary goal until the body is in balance. Unfortunately, we live in an economics-driven society and everybody wants results now. So to try and get this to the people is very difficult. However, to get yourself to a more functional position, if you're not in a functional position right now, I find things like calisthenics, yoga, and Pilates to be the most effective, dependent on the person. So calisthenics, things like animal walks, which I think a couple of you guys are on my program, I started doing. Awesome way to do it if you have the capability of doing it, okay? If you don't go do animal walks, don't go doing lizard walks and what's the scorpion walks and all those cool, crazy things. First, incline yourself to do yoga, all right, or Pilates. Get a functional basis of perception with very little elements of which points of the 5 principles behind biointegrity. Who remembers those 5 principles? What's principle 1? Remember 5 principles to biointegrity, guys. Rian, you must know this. I'll give you the last one, guys. Force reception is the last one. What are the first 4?
A big one I can remember, I'm not sure how accurate this is, but it's the relationship between compression and tension.
No, wrong. George?
What,
We'll try again. Don't be shy. Come on.
I'm trying to remember because I was talking to someone about this like a few weeks ago.
Come on, quickly. Just give me something. She's like,
what is
guys, I don't want to be here till midnight. I got a lot of stuff to cover. Just give me something. What do you think? If it's wrong, it's wrong. It's fine.
I already gave mine and it was wrong. So I'm
I'm
out.
talking to George. You failed already. Don't worry about it. What's up?
Oh, it's the way the muscle's able to handle. It's not force reception. It's
Well, that's the last one. I gave that one to you. Don't cheat, yeah. I
no,
already
I
gave you
know.
that
I'm
one.
just saying it's not that one. It's not. I'm just saying it's not that one because I sound.
You know, just want to make sure you're not taking credit for my one. That's all.
No. It's not force reception. It's like it sounds silly, but it's like a soft word. It's a way that
There's no soft words there, George.
there's one. What's it
There's
called?
nothing soft about any of these words, George. I love you. Hope, what do you think it is? You failed, George. I love you still. Don't worry. I'll teach you. What do you think it is, George? I mean, Hope.
Hypertonicity?
No, but I'll give it to you guys. All right. Inertia. Momentum. Accuracy. Impulse. Force reception. Everybody remember those?
I think it's
Yeah.
accuracy that I meant. I think I meant accuracy.
There's nothing soft about accuracy, bro.
No, it isn't. There isn't. My bad.
If you tell me that's a soft word, I feel sorry for your girlfriend because, my God, that is not an intimate word to use. Baby, I'm feeling really accurate about you.
That's a good thing. I know how I feel.
Yeah, well, it's a good thing if you're going to marry an actuarial
I'm going
scientist.
to be accurate tonight. Yeah.
Oh, please say that to her. I would love to hear the outcome. I'm going to be accurate tonight. All right, so it comes down to these 5 principles, right? Now, if you're going to try and apply a change to the body, I don't believe that there's one therapeutic discipline out there that's better than all others. This is the problem with industry, right? You get a cult of believers that say, oh no, ART doesn't do this. My therapeutic medium can make so much better changes. And the ART guys are saying, oh no, STR is terrible. It's so outdated. The ART is so much more advanced. And then you got the osteopath saying, that's all nonsense. Just make manual adjustments. It's all good. And then you got the other guy, the chiropractor saying that. You know, the osteo saying, no, manual adjustments aren't good on their own. No. You have to also make soft tissue changes and arrangements, right? And then you have functional neurologists saying, oh no, come on, just sort out the nervous system and everything will settle itself down. Reality is, you apply the therapeutic measure that the body is best capable of responding to, okay? If someone is in a state of emotional discord, right? They've just come through a divorce, or they've just lost somebody close to them. Someone's died, or they've just lost all their money in a terrible stock investment, whatever it is. And you try to influence them with neurological, tactics or therapeutic measures. I'm telling you now, those neurological sets will not stay because the state of discord that's happening in that person's psyche is so extreme that it will override any fix you're trying to put into their state. So what's going to be a better state of action to do? Not just, I'm not saying don't do functional neurology. Go ahead and apply it by all means, but also incorporate soft tissue. Why? Because if you change the state of soft tissue, and yes, there's an argument that people will say, but if you change the position of the neurological point, the soft tissue will change as well. Yes, it would in an optimal scenario. In a person that can become balanced and can receive therapy wholeheartedly. But if a person isn't in a position to receive that therapy wholeheartedly, for whatever reason, cancer, a type of pathology, or whatever it might be, incorporate other therapies as well. Okay, soft tissue release, soft tissue therapy, adjustments, whatever it might be, to allow fascia to open, even if it's just momentarily, even if the compensatory patterns set back into position for the sake of trying to protect the body because it is stressed. At least if you create that momentary position where the body is less stressed, it is a better state to try and influence ongoing change. Because let's take an exercise. Right? You guys have elevated glucose. Hup and George and Rian. You guys have elevated fasting glucose in the morning, terrible HRV. And I say, you know what? I want you to go do 10 1RMs. Go do 10 1RMs. And every single day, the glucose is getting worse or it's staying elevated, and your loads are getting worse. And they're getting worse. They get better for, say, the first 3 sessions, right? Because it's compensation that will come into effect. But once that time of compensation becomes extreme, what's going to happen to the movement? It's going to become impaired. Okay? And I say, oh no, keep on going, don't worry. Just keep pushing through it, push through it. Don't worry about the stress, don't worry about all the variables, don't worry about all the objective understanding that the body's saying, please don't do this to me. Just take your ego, put it right in the front line, and go and lift the ton of weight. Go. Yeah? What's going to happen? Can't hear you?
Something's going to break, right?
Something's going to break. Yep. Are you going to be happy? Are you going to be emotionally fulfilled? Is your emotion going to create positive emotion?
No.
If you're pushing a brick of stress on another brick of stress, another brick of stress, eventually you have a house of stress. And who wants to go into a house of stress? I don't. Okay. I'm sure the people in the Vatican are very, very highly strung. I wouldn't want to walk in there myself. Sorry. Just kidding. But in all seriousness now, right? You want to be able to change a person's position or their state when they are in a less stressed position of perceived stress. And sometimes you can't get there just by one medium. So I can't just get there by saying, okay, cool, let's do some like weird prodding and some like different heat therapy, thermoregulation, some adjustments of your senses and how they perceive. Yeah, that sounds great, awesome, fantastic. It might work for a day or two, but guess what? If you don't take the history into account and you make all these changes, they're going to come back again. All right? And even when you make those changes, it might not deal with the fascia. It might just deal with your perception of the fascia. If the fascia is bound into itself, making a few switches here and there, changing your brain will perceive the pain to be less, but it doesn't necessarily mean that the actual structure has changed. It might have slightly shifted for that moment because you're releasing the amount of stress to a compartment, a link in the chain, but not to say the whole chain is going to release. Definitely not. So how do we go about creating ongoing positive treatments for clients to get to linear progress? And linear doesn't mean going heavy every single time. Linear means that the body becomes less stressed in a constant state of continual proprioceptive development. And if I continue proprioceptive development, the circulatory net, the neural net, and the fascial nets become more harmonized in their function. So how do we do that? We encourage fascia to move more functionally within its parameters via soft tissue, via movement, and all components of movement. Those are more isometric or those are more isotonic in nature. But you need to progress when the person is right to do so. Okay? If I try to do a scorpion walk, I tried to do one yesterday. I've got no proprioception doing that at all. Why?
Really?
No, I can't. You know what it is? See that scar? My rectus abdominis, aponeurosis that lies underneath my rectus abdominis, has so much scar tissue that I don't get very good extension in my superficial front line. So my quadriceps and my rectus femoris are really, really tight because they're trying to cope with the demand because there's not as much awareness here as there should be. So I
Is
need
that
to
the same with me?
possibly with your scarring. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. So, but I don't think yours is as dramatic because it wasn't down the linear elbow. It was to the side.
Hey, bro.
But it's a good thing.
Mine's pretty big, all right? It was like 40 staples or some shit, okay?
No, it's big, but it's cut, it's better because it's not down the center.
Oh, that's funny. I always thought it would be better if it was down the center. From the lack of
asymmetry that it causes. Yeah. You're thinking from that point? No, because just remember, when it goes down the center, if you have a central point where you can focus intention to, you'll be able to identify and perceive an imbalance to the right or to the left, right? But we always, our conscious thought will always go along the spinal column. But if your conscious thought has been disrupted along positions of the spinal column, even though it's anterior to the spinal column, along this segment, you don't know where your center is. So you're constantly adjusting here and constantly adjusting here because you don't know where this is. So you can't perceive it being left or right. So it causes the switch to always occur. And that's what happens, always switching from a different obliques, different segments of the rec abdominis itself. So it's always better to have, in my opinion, scar in the one hemisphere or the other rather than down the center. Down the central axis, it's extremely difficult to contend with. It's an ongoing battle.
Yeah, makes sense. Mine's been feeling pretty good to be fair lately. So.
Sorry, say again?
Mine's been feeling pretty good lately, to be fair.
Yeah, you're doing more movement stuff as well, more mobility.
Yeah.
Yeah, which comes down to the therapeutic, that's a therapeutic measure, right? Without having any, you're not just going for heavy lifts, you're incorporating good movement before doing heavy lifts, and Metcon activation before every workout.
Yeah.
And after Metcon activation, whether or not you should squat or shouldn't, right? Immediately.
That's funny you mentioned that again. Today I was exhausted because I got up early, the usual thing, went to the gym, taught 3 classes. There was like 17 people today in the class, and I just, a bit nervous about it, and got through. Everything was good, and I was so tired afterwards. I thought, okay, I was going to do the Metcon activation and see how I feel. And after the Metcon, I felt good. During, felt like absolute shit, but afterwards felt quite good. Went outside, ran in the sun, and it was good. But it was, it was funny that you mentioned that because it was that transition there that made me decide if I was going to train or not. And,
it's a perfect way to decide whether or not you're going to put load on your body or you're going to train with high velocity, like sprints, for example, right? Which you were doing. So it's a great way because, so if you just bound, like a fascia is just a bit tight, but your, your neurological proprioception to your periphery isn't necessarily totally exhausted. All right, so all you need to do is increase circulation, and the best way we can increase circulation dramatically is by opening up our fascia. Okay, so when you increase circulation, you increase available nutrients, more oxygen, neurons get a bit more revived, right? And then you can go for it. But if there's a bigger issue, for example, if the neurons have become hyperexcited because of a workout that's overstimulating, when you do the Metcon, and you find you still feel shit, then you shouldn't do that workout. That's why I always say with all of you, Metcon activation, 8 minutes. And then afterwards, if you can't do the workout, don't. Rather do more Metcon or more yoga. Just don't put weight on your body if it doesn't want to handle it. I know it's a blow to the ego because I like training with weights, but as I've gotten older, sorry.
No, I just want to continue. Like yesterday, I don't know why, but I felt I kind of felt overwhelmed with the leg workout that you sent, right? So it kind of had like a little mental thing that I had like I was battling with it since the morning. And then I was feeling a little tired. I did the Metcon. I felt like absolute dog shit while doing the Metcon. Afterwards, it still kind of felt like shit. I felt loose though. My body felt good, but I just felt really tired. But then I warmed up a little bit more, and then I had an insane leg workout. So how does that kind of, because I didn't feel it after Metcon. I really didn't. But then once I started doing front squats, I went balls to the wall.
So, in other words,
I don't know if it's just a mental thing.
Yeah, it could be psychological, definitely. But you must remember one thing: bodybuilding is not healthy. It's not. All right, especially when you're getting ready for a competition, it's training regardless. It's not what I believe in for purpose of I help athletes, but I always tell you guys, look, it's not a healthy outcome to it because you're going to be overtraining. All right, you're going to try and install the best parameters to keep things balanced. But when you've got 5 weeks left to a bodybuilding or 4 weeks left to a bodybuilding show, there isn't much balance that you can really have. You got to train. So you're going to overwork your autonomic sympathetic systems, which is pretty much what you're doing. So the reason why you felt better is because you just like literally squeezed your adrenals and said, hey, Let's get on with it. And I did that for years. And guess what happened? I torn more muscles than a bloody Thai boxing fighter by the age of 14. They tear a lot of things by 14. It's crazy. Just see these kids, eh? Like they're like 3 years old, already kicking bamboo tree. That's unbelievable. But by the time they're 14, they're broken. Poor kids. I tore more muscles than I should have. Why? Because slapping those adrenals. Come on. I have to do the squats. Don't worry about everything else. Let me do the squats. Okay.
You know what's Rian? You know what's funny? My final piece of coursework on sports psychology was about goal setting and like short term, long term, and well, medium term, but mostly short and long term, and how athletes usually focus on long term goals, and it disrupts their performance in training, and in competition, because it's overwhelming and there's too much to think about, and it just seems unattainable. And one of the things the sports psychologist will do is create short-term goals and have them focus on just that. And there's like a plethora of other things too, but like one of the big things is to focus on the small things that you're doing, basically process goals versus outcome goals. So it could be that the leg workout just seems so massive that it was just haunting you, but then you started it and you just focus on the front squats and they're doable. So like just the front squats is something you can do and you just kind of get on with it and it's fine. Whereas if you try and think about the whole workout, it's just like, nah, I can't do that shit.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And that does make a lot of sense. But if your body was really tight doing the Metcon, it was still tight, it was maybe a little bit looser, but when you finish the Metcon, regardless of your psychology situation, you got to listen to the body as well, right? The body's
no, Rian, don't do it. This was the psychology. Forget the body. Forget it.
Yeah, don't worry about the other therapy. Just worry about psychology. Don't worry about that guy doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah,
I don't listen to anyone. It's like any guru. I don't listen to any guru anymore at all. Like when someone says, we're going to start, this is our family, right? That's the words they use. Yeah. This is our new family. Well, this is the revolution to therapy, or it's the new development, the best new development. Anytime they say the best, the family, the tribe, no. I'm not listening. I'm out. I'll read what they have, take the good parts, I'll leave all the other nonsense. And the nonsense is there's not just one way to tackle a problem. But having said that, there are multiple factors to consider to a problem. Psychology is one. Another thing, however, is the state of your periphery, right? If your periphery is extremely hypertonic on the level of its neurons being overexcited, right? Not just the fascia being a little bit restricted, but the actual neuron activity. And all of a sudden you start like, bah, oh, I'm going to go front squat. Boom on, let whip it me. And then eventually Ronnie Coleman, with your crutches and your wheelchairs, because your spine is disintegrated, that is the outcome. But like I said, unfortunately with bodybuilding, it's not the healthiest sport in the world. Right? It's really not. It's actually probably the worst to one's health. People might look sexy, but they're really not healthy at all.
Weightlifting is pretty bad too,
yeah. The difference with weightlifters is they eat. They don't deprive themselves of calories while putting out a shitload of output of calories.
True.
Bodybuilders eat more when they train less, when they eat less when they train more. That's exactly what they do. They do exactly the opposite of what you should do. So it's like, how do you hammer your nervous system? Okay, let's deprive you in every way and ask you to do more. It's kind of like with what you would do to somebody going into a concentration camp. It's like instead of having 3 meals, why don't you have a potato and chip away at that bloody brock until the cows come home? It's kind of like what bodybuilders do. They put themselves in concentration camps.
It's funny, just before we move on, me giving you advice just after finishing uni, it's like, I've finished uni, I know everything. Like, I've got my degree now. I'm pretty much an expert. So just listen to what I'm saying. Fuck Justin, all right? I know what I'm talking about. I did like 3 modules on psychology, so I'm pretty sure I'm doing it.
Yeah. Just don't listen to Justin, because you're gonna end up having to do more modules of psychology to get over it. All right, so back to this. All right, so we have inertia, momentum, accuracy, impulse, force reception. In order to have positive force reception to a plane, an anatomical train, should we say, for the purpose of this module, we need to install the right amount of inertia, the right amount of momentum, so that we can also have the right amount of accuracy which are of a force going to the right angle, so that the impulse of that force can drive the angle toward the right reception. Okay? In other words, if a person can do that with weight training, go ahead. There's a lot of structural balance programs, right? There's split squats, so the biggest, use structural balance exercise now for God knows how long. You got McGill airplanes, you got all these things. And then in the fitness world, the strength training world, everybody's so set on using weight, because if you don't use a weight, you must be a sissy, right? But which is ridiculous. But if your body can't handle its own, internal forces, how are you going to think putting an external force on your periphery is going to make it even better? It's not. You're just going to destroy yourself even more. So trust me, think about these 5 principles when you decide to open the door. Okay? Your method of training is the door. Your method of movement, it's not training. Your method of movement is the door. Your key and your lock are different therapeutic measures. Okay? Fascial to neurological. Fascial, circulatory, and neurological all come into here. So, why is the fascial net the quickest to alter its position, as well as the quickest to reset compensation? Why? Why is that, guys? Why is fascial the quickest to alter? And why is it the quickest to reset?
Because it was the most superficial, the most physically manipulatable. No, I don't know.
No, it's good. I like where you're going.
Manipulatable.
Okay. I'm going to read something to you guys quickly. I'm going to sit down here so I can read this. Just one moment. Okay. Right. If you guys open up your PDFs as well, if you can. It's a big PDF, though. It's very big. Right. So there's a poem. I took this straight out of Anatomy Train, so I thought it was awesome. Read the poem, okay? It's from Robert Frost. And this poem really depicts what anatomy trains is, or fascial lines really are. Let me get for my debut. All right, that's not the poem. She is in a field of silken tent at midday when a sunny summer breeze has dried the dew and all its ropes relent, so that in guise and gentle sway and ease, and its supporting central cedar pole, that its pinnacle to heavenward and signifies the surest of the soul, seems to owe naught to any single core, but single held by none, is loosely bound by countless silken ties of love and thought to everything on earth the compass around. And only by one's going slight taught and capriciousness of summer air is the slightest bondage made aware. I absolutely love that, because to me, that truly depicts what fascia really is. What do you think? What do you guys get from that poem? What do you think it is? Because this will give you a reason as to why it is probably the easiest to manipulate, but also the quickest to reset into adaptation or adaptation.
Is it because that this line here, but strictly held by none, is loosely bound by countless silken ties of love and thought? So there's loads of different aspects of fascia and like different, let's say, individuals of fascia concerning the issue or the structure. So if you fix one, it's easy to fix that one, but it'll probably also be pulled back by everyone else.
Yes, you're right. That is definitely one. It wasn't the point of view I was looking for, but you're right in that point of view. That's a very, very good assumption that you made from that poem. Very good. What else do you think, Hub? Give us a guess. Doesn't have to be right. Just a personal guess. Make it personal. Make this personal right now. So, how do you feel that poem resonates in the understanding of fascia?
That it's like changing all the time.
That's changing all the time. Where do you get that in the poem? Because you're right. Where do you get that where it's changing all the time in the poem? What segment of the poem?
Let me read that one. Can I read it?
Of course.
So where you got it? Here.
I would say, if I could throw out a guess, I would say it's strictly held by none, is loosely bound by countless silken ties of love and thought. I think that right there summarizes exactly the point you're trying to make.
The poem is quite hard for me to understand.
Of course. Of course. Of course.
I was going to say the bondage part.
Of course you were, mate.
Yeah, we're not talking about your activities you have after the mentorship. Okay, keep your bondage talk for another time. Yeah.
Okay.
But yes, the bondage does have a part to play. Now, let's just go back to the poem a second, guys. Okay. All right, the last part there. To everything on earth, so by countless silken ties of love and thought, to everything on earth, the compass around. Now this part. And only by one's going slightly taut in the I can't pronounce that word.
Capriciousness.
Is that right?
I think so. Capriciousness.
Of summer air is the slightest bondage made aware. Now, aware, firstly, is a word to consider. Only through the slightest change are we actually really made aware of our fascia. Oh, 1 second, George. Remember what I said to you about the speed of the 3 nets? What speed does the fascia move at?
780.
Which is how many times faster than the neural net?
Great.
3 times faster. All right. In other words, do we have as much of a conscious control over our fascial net?
No.
Right. So, because we can alter the line, the compression or the tension factors of our fascial net by manual therapy or other forms of therapies, physically, but however, the fascia doesn't just work in a segment of myofascia. It integrates with all different trains on a subconscious level toward preserving one's center of mass for the purpose of homeostatic energetic efficiency. And an efficiency that your brain determines is actually efficient may not be the best physiological position of energetic efficiency. But your brain has perceived that to be so because of our environmental stimulus. Training is one environmental stimulus. We went over environmental stimulus in the last mentorship. And I know I'm not going to touch on that again because the amount is vast and varied as to what could be causing it. However, we need to understand when something is being caused, when a reaction is taking place. So, because the fascial net moves at such a high rate or high speed of response, it is easiest to change its position, but also easiest to reset a null position. This is the reason why purely doing a massage or purely doing a release technique is not enough. You need to incorporate all 3 nets into your therapeutic approach in order to create consistent change. However, if you cannot access a more complex chain or more complex net, the easiest net that you can access change to is the fascial net. Right? If you cannot change the position of your circulatory net, in other words, somebody has diabetes. Okay, let's take an example. Someone has diabetes. Now you want to take someone that has diabetes and you want to get them to reduce their, or PCOS. Okay, you want to get them to reduce the amount of inflammation that's in their body due to excessive amounts of glucose. Right? How long is it going to take you to do that, nutraceutically and biochemically? It's going to take a day. Is it going to take, let me ask you another question. Is it going to take you 10 minutes? Yes or no?
No.
All right. That same person has obviously got issues with it, would possibly, not obviously, sorry, would possibly have issues on the superficial front line. All right. Because that line basically protects the vital organs. Okay. It's a muscle mass that encompasses over the vital organs, as possibly the spiral line. Okay. Which is one of the 7 lines within the PDF we're going to cover very briefly today. Now, if I were to say to you, okay, we are dealing with this person's pathology. We are trying to give them the right nutritional support, hormonal support in some instances to try and address the circulatory issue. All right. But in that time, that person has pain. That person has tension because fascia is locked down because of their pathology. Now, what is the likelihood, if I were to say to you with PDTR, if you were to take somebody with PCOS, okay, pathology of PCOS, and they have a tight superficial front line or a tight spiral line, right, and you assess and you figure out that their vision or their hearing might be imbalanced due to some kind of overactive nociception or some other overactive thermoregulatory receptor as well, being heat or cold, whatever it might be, or some vibration receptors might be a little bit off, and you change that, all right, how long will it take you to change that state?
Well, I can improve muscle function pretty quickly, but what I noticed that sometimes it just the function disappears as well with myofascial therapy as well. So what you said before, like 3 years back, I went into myofascial release, like releasing the hell out of people, and I might have caused some dysfunctions in people because you tell them move slowly, try to avoid explosiveness, and they actually do always the opposite because it feels pretty okay.
Yes.
And then and then they wreck themselves. With the come of PDTR, I could, in moderation, I could improve function neurology, but sometimes it's just not enough as well.
Would you say that with PDTR will improve functional neurology of the periphery, right? It definitely could, because obviously it integrates adaptive changes within the central. However, that functional change in the peripheral neurology doesn't always necessarily change the myofascial tone.
No.
Right. So, and how long does it take you in a session to create global functional change, or not even global, say a segmental functional change to, say, a segment of the frontal, let's talk, for example, the superficial front line. How long would it take, as it's doing PDTR, to completely change the altered function of the superficial front line's awareness? How many sessions?
It's hard to say. I have some other tricks that I use that I didn't have from PDTR.
But don't go into those tricks. Don't go into those tricks. Don't go into those tricks. PDTR is fantastic, and it can work instantaneously if you know what you're doing as well. Like we mentioned with a colleague of ours, it's fantastic. But the person has to also be in the right state to receive that therapy. Now, if a person has an extreme pathology, and you're trying to give them this therapy, however, that underlying pathology is only causing more stress to the central nervous system. Okay, and diabetes definitely causes stress to the hypothalamus, massive stress to the hypothalamus. Which, if you cause stress to the hypothalamus, most other areas of cognitive reception are also going to become stressed out. All right. So in a case where someone has an extreme situation like diabetes or PCOS, we obviously are trying to encourage reduce stress by nutrition, by nutraceuticals. You would like to get them to a position whereby neurologically they can actually accept the receipt of new information, so they can process it efficiently to a better orchestrated response, right? However, out of all three of those different scenarios, which scenario is going to give immediate relief to a segment within that person's body that is bound down with pain? So let me put it this way. PDTR, we test different things, we see they have to move around. So that takes a bit longer, right? If I put my hands on a certain segment of myofascia and I cause a release, that release may not hold. I'm not saying it does, because most of the time it doesn't. However, it does give a room and potential where there wasn't before.
Mm.
And this is where understanding anatomical trains comes into such great use, because it allows a new opportunity for a therapist to be able to include more advanced strategies to have the processing received far more effectively. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't assess the person prior to doing myofascial release. You should always assess them without any intervention, okay, where they are. But once you've assessed them, and I'm not just saying assess their structure, but assess exactly their neurological awareness with their periphery as well. And once you've assessed the severity of that position, you can utilize multiple disciplines to create a better scenario of inducing change. And in doing so, you might find a stronger outcome to the same therapies that you've applied on their own. Okay. Rules of the game. Everybody open the PDF, please. Right. I'm going to read through this because this is the most important to grasp. Okay. You can learn bony prominence, you can learn bony stations and myofascial tracts. Those are all cool, and you should learn them. They're all listed in the PDF as well. I'm not going to go through them by trains because you'll be at 12 o'clock tonight. But it's there for you guys to read. I worked very hard for you guys to have that information, so please do read it. This is a very quick this PDF is a summary of 2 huge textbooks, but please take advantage of it. I do apologize for the grammar. I haven't edited properly, but I wanted to get it to you guys today. Rules of the game. All right, so rule 1, tracks proceed in a consistent direction without interruption. Okay, in other words, if the glutes are like so, guys, there's okay. All right, so let's say here the hamstrings. Okay, so we got condyle. Hamstrings come over here, right? And then we got and you got the ischial tuberous. All right, so the hamstrings over there. Cool, right? And then you have your femur coming through. Okay. Terrible diagram. So you have your hamstrings, okay, over here on the condyles of the femur, and then you have your glutes, your glute max, which comes right around and attaches over here onto the linea aspera of the glute as well. All right. So which direction are the hamstrings going in? And which direction are the glutes going in? Are they converging in the same line? Yes or no?
Just show that again, please, Justin.
Hamstrings are going up. The glutes are going across. Put it this way. The glutes are going this way, right? And some of them are going down. They're coming out like a diagonal line. Hamstrings are coming up in a straight line. Are they converging in the same line? Yes or no? It's a very obvious answer. Glutes are going this way. Hamstrings are going this way. Are they in the same direction?
No.
Exactly. That means they don't form in the same anatomical track. That's rule number 1. So, by crease, let's go over here. Sorry. Rule number 2.
So there's loads of tracks then.
Yeah, huge.
Oh, I had this idea there would be like 3 tracks, not 3, but there would
No,
be a
7.
handful of tracks, and they were just all along down the body. So there's like continuous and not continuous. There's different ones all across the body then, depending on.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's why I
yeah,
said
my
this
bad.
is like a, hi, I'm Anatomical Trains. Pleased to meet you. I have beautiful blonde hair and beautiful blue eyes. I'm trying to excite you into taking me out for a date. And the date is you reading the PDF over and over again, asking me questions, if you want to ask me questions, and then reading the textbooks. That's the date. Right now, I'm just trying to tickle your fancy as to what this all is and how cool it is. And I'm going to give you some cool little key points. Not all of them, because there's too many to go over. I'm going to give you 3 in the mentorship today to consider as to how powerful the understanding of anatomical trains truly is. But before we get into that, let's go back, please. Track 1, the second point, continuity of fascial fibers go fairly straight or change direction only gradually. Direction of alignment with the anatomical neutral position within the anatomically neutral position. So you must remember all the tracks are measured when the body is in its anatomical neutral position. And that is like, if anybody knows Da Vinci's diagram of the human body, that is the anatomical neutral position when the hands are down to the side, palms facing forward, and toes turn out 5 degrees. Okay, that's the anatomical neutral position. The depth of either origin or insertion of a muscle may influence the line of track in which it may cause influence. So with that, guys, would you say that the depth of the depth of the hamstrings as opposed to the depth of the obturator internus, right? Obturator internus is an external hip rotator, okay? Now, the obturator internus lies far deeper, but it has a very similar line of pull to that of the hamstring, very similar line of continuity. But because it lies in a completely different fascial depth, it doesn't form part of the same track. Okay. Right, so you guys, are you with me so far?
Yeah. I'm looking at the lines right now.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. The depth of the origin. Okay. The last one, rule 1, intervening planes of muscles that intersect through opposing fascia, tensile pull, are not to be considered. And this is a good example of like the short head bicep femoris and the adductor magnus. Okay. They do not form in the same fascial train. However, they do have intervening planes of muscle, or there are intervening planes of muscles that do intersect through opposing fascia, where they have different lines of pull and different relationships to other positions along the fascial train itself.
Could you give a more practical example, Justin?
Well, then the adductor magnus and the short head of the bicep femoris.
Yeah, but you can use. Can you give like a practical example of those two? Because I mean, yeah, I'm a little confused.
What would you like me to explain?
The whole thing, because I don't understand that point at all.
Okay, that point. I'll go through the point again. I'll try and explain it a little bit better. So last one, intervening planes of muscles that intersect through opposing fascia tensile pull are not to be considered. Okay, so when muscle can go, basically when muscle fascia or myofascia of muscle intersects another muscle's myofascia, however, the intersection between those lines, okay, for example, the obliques and the rectus abdominis, okay, the myofascia intersect. However, the pull of the rectus abdominis is going like this, down to the pubic symphysis. The pull of the obliques are going around into the lumbar vertebra. They're the same intervening line, but a different line of force, a different line of pull.
Okay, I understand.
So you can't.
So that intervention is to not be considered.
Track.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
So that intervention is to not even be considered. It's just
No.
So it's like
Different train.
obviously, yeah. So not to be too simplistic about it, but it's just that intersection is irrelevant.
Not that it's irrelevant. It's irrelevant
Yeah.
if you're trying to treat the superficial front line. However, you should be treating the lateral line. The lateral line, but you must remember, all lines will have a crossover of effect to other lines as well. But it's important to understand what is the problem, where is the restriction occurring, and as to what a myofascia bundle within a specific track can cause the most dramatic release to that track. And funny enough, when you cause a release in a myofascial bundle within a track itself, that release can carry over to other limitations you may have in other tracks entirely without even touching them. So you need to really look at the structure. You need to look at the anatomical structure of the person in front of you and see as to if their knees are going in, knees are going out, shoulders are pulling up, shoulders are pulling down. The xiphoid process is pulling down into the pubic symphysis. Look exactly as to where the scapulars are in the back, the positions of the ASIS in the front of the hip, the positions of the PIIS in the back of the pelvis, the position of what we call the tibial plateau, along with the patella, which should form an isosceles triangle, the positions of the malleoli and the fifth metatarsal ridge, or the malleoli in line with the medial and lateral condyles of the tibia. All these bony prominences, but it's like I said, this is not to delve into, because if I had to delve into that, then I would have a mentorship just for that. Like to get it all done in one. This is a module for you to get a little bit of understanding as to what the fascias do, or what the fascia does, and also to give you a little bit of tidbits as how to go and look into it. If you guys come on to series 2, because remember there's 2 different types of mentorships. There's a one-to-one and a group only. The one-to-one, if you want a more understanding as into a specificity behind anatomical trains, I'll be happy to spend an hour with you one-to-one, as long as I know clear defined questions. But to be able to give you how the complexity of global anatomical trains work in symbiosis with one another, that's like a 2-year course. Very, very involved, because it even goes into the pleura, around the viscera. All right, it's like it's extreme, like the deep front line, extremely involved. Extremely, extremely, extremely involved. But the rules of the game. Back again. Rule 2 of the game is there are 3 bullet points here. The first bullet point is, let's put my computer on charge, sorry guys. Tracks are tracked down at bony stations or attachments, okay? So your bony prominences, that's where your tracks will be tracked down from. A station is where the outer myofascial bag attaches itself onto the inner osteoarticular wrapping. So where basically the fascia of the tissue itself encapsulates around tendons or continual tendinous structures or ligamental structures within the actual within the anatomical train. Okay, osteoarticular wrappings. The more superficial fibers, I always spell superficial wrong, sorry. Superficial fibers of the myofascial unit, however, can demonstrated be seen to run on. And this communicates, and thus communicate to the next piece of myofascial tract. So where there isn't as much connective tissue or as much fascial tissue, rather there's more muscle involved, they have a better connection with the next track in the train itself. Does that make sense? Guys, do you get that? Hope, do you get what I said there?
Yeah.
Okay. Give us relay back to me what I said in your understanding.
That the different lines of the myofascia, they go on top of each other.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow they don't connect because for example, the superficial front line and the spiral line, they go actually in a movement. They go in a different in a different movement plane.
Mm-hmm. But that's more about the first rule. So that you can't have that. That's right. That's about the first rule. But what I'm saying right now is if you have, so within a segment of track along the trains, where we have different tracks, some tracks will converge into osteoarticular surfaces. In other words, they converge more into connective tissue, right? Before they go on to the next track within the train itself. Okay, think about this, guys. So think about trains and tracks. So a train is going along, right? You're going from England, right? You're going to Paris, right? From England to Paris, there's no stops on the way on the Eurostar, right? It's a straight on. But you go to Belgium, you need to stop over at Paris before you go into Belgium, as an example. Now, the train that's going from England to Paris, the communication along that line of track is going to be amplified far more than when the train from the position of the track that's in London to the position of the track that's in Belgium, because there isn't an osteoarticular surface in between. So the tracks that meet up with one another that haven't got osteoarticular surfaces in between them communicate better with one another. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Very important you understand that, because
what would be an example?
That's exactly. Thank you for asking that question. If we were to think about the biceps, okay, in the deep front arm line, and I'm just make sure I'm right. Am I understanding saying that? I still have to refer it back as well, after years and years. Just make sure that's right. Okay. Sorry, yeah, I'm right. The deep front arm line encompasses the biceps, okay? Now, on the deep front arm line, we also go from the biceps to the pectoralis minor, okay? Now, the pectoralis minor and the biceps intersect between the coracoid process, all right? So that's osteoarticular surface. So the communication between the pec minor and the bicep wouldn't be as prominent as the locals within the bicep itself. Now you have an express and you have a local, which we're going to talk about as another rule. It's one of the fourth rules. But you have locals that cross monoarticulate structures, and then you have expresses that cross by multiple articular structures, meaning that a muscle that crosses over to more than one joint, or a muscle that crosses over just one joint. Locals cross over generally one joint. So they're more defined as a local action within a global sequence of reaction. Now, the global sequence of reaction in the biceps is the bicep brachii. Why? Because it can flex the elbow as well as help with the humeral flexion and its function. But the local underlying tissue, being that of the coracobrachialis, brachialis, or the pronator teres, creates a finite small position of change along an express of change. So in what we're saying now with the myofascial tract, so the link between the coracobrachialis and the bicep brachii would be a far stronger myofascial link or anatomical train link within its train than that of the bicep and the pec minor.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yes. So here's I'm gonna go crazy with this question. Would it then be okay? Let me just try and put this in proper English though. Would it then be crazy to assume that Damn it. So now I'm confusing myself. So then would it be crazy to assume that it would be more likely that there's better communication when you talk about a anatomically neutral position, that there's a better communication in the postural muscles? Would that be like a crazy assumption? Because it creates stability. So there's a lot of communication that has to continuously happen.
So postural muscles. Crazy.
But when I say postural, I mean in an anatomically neutral position.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even know if this is relevant anymore.
No, you're right. So it's better, but what does that got to do with anatomical trains? You're right, but I want you to tie it into anatomical trains.
Okay. I knew, I don't know, in my head there's some sort of a connection.
There is. There is.
Yeah, I'm just going to go.
You know what that is? The continuity behind the superficial front line as opposed to superficial back line in terms of myofascial. So we're talking about that second rule. Let's talk about that second rule, okay? So pull up the second rule. And the second rule was, go right up to the top, so 20 pages to get through. Second rule, right? Station where outer myofascial bag attaches itself onto inner articular wrapping. The more superficial fibers of the myofascial unit, however, can demonstrably be seen to run on and thus communicate to the next piece of myofascial tract. Now, superficial back line. What is the word in there so it says superficial, right? Meaning it's more closer to the surface. And then you also have the superficial front line. That's also closer to the surface, right? However, the difference between the two is that the myofascial bags of the superficial back line has a greater continuity of communication because of the superficial fibers running on with one another without having as many osteoarticular wrappings between the tracts of those stations. Now, what gives us upright posture? The superficial back line. The superficial back line starts to develop from when we're in the fetal position and we start to crawl, we start to stand up and walk. The tissue of the superficial back line becomes encouraged to take on form of tone to allow for structure to have postural control. The superficial back line, in essence, is responsible for the gross amount of postural control in the extended position. But it can only maintain its degree of postural control with its relationship with the superficial front line as well. So you must remember that if there's discommunication in the front line, tissue will become compressed, which will cause the back line to become locked along in certain segments of its track, of its train. Certain tracks will become locked along. So you're right in your understanding, but must remember there in postural muscles, it encompasses that of both this back line and the front line. Okay. Last point, rule 2. Most stations have more communication with the next myofascial linkage in the superficial rather than the deeper fibers. So that's straightforward. Okay. Rule 3. Tracks join and diverse into switches and the occasional roundhouse. Now that's where it really gets complicated. So in the situation where there's a roundhouse, I'm sorry I'm laughing because I'm just going to throw a real spanner into the works. Where there's a roundhouse, the first 2 rules can sometimes not apply at all. Let's get thrown out there. Okay, and it will be, the roundhouses will be established within the document when you consider that. A roundhouse is like around the ASIS joint. Okay, so when there's the ASIS joints, for example, the rectus femoris doesn't have a continuous fascial continuity with the rectus abdominis, right? So actually, there's the rectus femoris ends here, and the rectus abdominis starts here, or ends here. Sorry, rectus femoris starts here, and the rectus abdominis stops here. There's no fascial community. There's no abdominis here. There's no rectus here, because that's the pubic bone. That's where the adductors are. However, because of the roundhouse of the SIS, and they insert into the same bone and have the same function, they are form part of the same fascial continuity of the superficial front line. Okay. Told you, sir. Sorry. I know it's like, whoa. And I was like, when I first learned that, I'm like, oh, I just got this point of the fascial connection. Things are just straight out the cut. You got to consider that. So there are roundhouses to be considered in fascial trains, but they will be brought up in the document for you to consider as well. Okay. Another roundhouse would be that of the abdominal complex. The TVA, the obliques, and the rectus abdominis in certain lines, particularly certain spiral lines. Okay. Rule 3. Sorry, I think that's done. No? Tracks, stations, yep. Tracks join the wrist switches by fascia plane split one another. Rule 4. My apologies. Expressors and locals are situated whereby polyarticular muscles that overlie monoarticular muscles, each of which duplicates some single part of the overall function of the polyarticular muscle. Okay, and I explained it to you before. So you get deep locals underneath the bicep brachii that express the functionality of the bicep brachii itself, which is a polyarticular muscle. So the bicep brachii is polyarticular, but the brachialis is monoarticular. Very important to remember this, guys. Very, very important to remember this. Postural set is determined less by superficial expressors than by deeper locals. If you want to set postural tone, you want to set biomechanical alignment, and you focus your energy on trying to realign expressors, you're going to waste your energy and effort. You have a far better shout at changing the position of the locals or manipulating position of the locals to create an effect in the expressors toward postural neutral reset. Okay, another example of this, instead of working the gastrocs, you work the soleus. Working the soleus will cause a more immediate effect on the tibial plateau from its tension that it has in a monoarticular structure, and that will allow less tension to exert it be apparent in the gastrocs, which would take tension off the knees. Because the gastrocs also have opposing myofascial pull of the hamstrings when the knee is flexed. Not when the knee is straight. They have exactly the same myofascial line of pull. When the knee is locked, both the gastrocs and the hamstrings work in the same type of myofascial tension pull. When the knee is unlocked, however, they work independently. But if one aspect of the independent function of either the gastrocs or the hamstrings is tight, the knee will not track properly, and you will have tension of extreme amounts of either internal or external torque occurring due to one component being too tight. And how do you deal with that? You don't work with the express or the myofascial bag that's causing the restriction. You work with the local. So you need to identify what a local is and what an express is. And that takes time and patience and constant study of this document as well as the books in question. This document will give you a very big head start in the books. I can guarantee you, if you read these 20 pages a few times over, and then you go to read those textbooks, they'll come to you like this. I have taken, giving you a head start of 2 years with this PDF. All right, take the time to read it. It's very, very important to understand the concept of the roundhouse and express and locals. That, of all the rules, is the most fundamental to be able to create change. Okay? We have the different lines. Okay, I'm going to go through these lines with you very quickly and very briefly. I want you guys to read the PDFs. All right, so now, firstly, the summary. Very important to remember these 4 points in the summary, and this is in the PDF, not on the PowerPoint. Follow the grain of connective tissue, maintaining a fairly steady direction without jumping levels or crossing through intervening planes of fascia. Okay, so if you're going up along tissue and all of a sudden it feels like there's a ridge or a knot, that's an intervening layer of fascia, unless it is a trigger point that's formed within that fascia. But for the most part, that's not going to be the case. Unless someone's riddled with tons of injuries, it will be a fluid line until there's a stopping point, and that's an intervening line of fascia. Note the stations where these myofascial tracts tie down to the underlying tissues. Know your tracks. Know your stations of your myofascial tracts. All the stations are listed. If you look at the next page, it says in the superficial backline, I listed every station of every train for you guys. Okay, I've given you numbered stations. I couldn't make it any more easier if I tried. Right? You need to understand where the stations are and then understand, and they're also in corresponding order. So 1 goes with 1, 2 goes with 2, 3, and so on. Okay? I even put it in pairs for you guys so you can understand where the stations are to where the tracks are. So if you understand that the plantar surfaces of the toe, sorry, I forgot, it's supposed to be of, not O. Plantar surfaces of the toe phalanges is a station. Plantar is underneath or above the foot. What is that, guys?
Underneath.
Underneath, right? And then you have plantar fascia and short toe flexors. That's the myofascia. And you have the calcaneus and you have the gastrocnemius. The condyles of the femur, the hamstrings. All right, so you need to understand when you're searching of the body, where are the stations? Where are the tracks, sorry, for your stations? Because if you don't know where your tracks are, you don't know where your bony prominences are, you're not going to know where your stations are. Because it's far easier to identify a bony landmark than it is to identify a station. Particularly when myofascia becomes congested or excessively locked long or excessively locked short, which is most of the case. So you can't say, that is what it's going to, where it's going to be every single time. That's where the gastroc is going to be. That's where the posterior elements of the adductor magnus is going to be, because it can alter shape and form dependent on influence of its environment, which we mentioned before. But understanding where the bony landmarks are, you will have a far better idea of applying where the station could be. So identify your tracks. Get you understanding where the tracks of the body are. All of them. Very important. I can't stress how important that is. That is where you start. You identify your tracks, bony prominences of the bony prominences of the bony prominences. Make them your second language. If I ask you, what is the medial surface of the upper head of the upper head of the femur called? You should know. What is it? What is the medial point of the up? You get, they're called lesser or greater. What is the medial point? Trochanter, exactly. And if we're going to say the more distal medial position of the femur, what is that? The medial epicondyle, or the medial condyle, depending on how distal it is. If it's distal, it's condyle. If it's more proximal, it's epicondyle. If I ask you, where's the pes incernus? Where's the pes incernus? What will you guys tell me?
Pes incernus. Don't know.
Under the medial border of the ischial tuberosity. Of the ischial, the tibial plateau. And that's how you need to know, like, you know it like that. Because if you know it like that, when you see a person, you'll know exactly where the stations are, and then you can identify where the tracks are. Sorry, I know where the tracks are, so you can identify where the stations are and create a positive change. If you don't know where the tracks are, you're not going to be able to influence the stations, and then your trains are going to fall off the tracks. Okay? And then you're going to have a lawsuit. No lawsuits, please. All right. So, note the stations where these myofascial tracts tie down and underlying tissues. Note any other tracks that diverge or converge with the line. Okay, so there'll be certain tracks that actually don't fall on the same myofascial line. You need to note them to understand whether or not you are in the right position or the wrong position of the line itself. look for underlying single joint muscle that may affect the working of the line. Okay? So you have to look, for example, in this scenario, if you were to think about the the superficial back line, when we think about the hamstrings, and we didn't consider the deep external rotators of the hip, then we might throw our line completely off of its myofascial station. So we might think of ourselves as affecting the medial hamstrings or the lateral hamstrings, but we're actually affecting the deep external rotators, depending on the line of pull in which you're trying to create change in. That's a summary of the rules. Right. George, 3 things you learned, please.
The accuracy is not a soft word.
That's one thing. That's one. Okay, I'll give you that one. 2 more.
No. So, to be honest, I was just thinking of this before you asked. I was thinking earlier, what have I learned today? So the relearn the effect of the fascial net on the rest of the body, on the other net. The fact that it's the most manipulatable, or at least in short term, but it's also the one that will regress to its injured, to its former state. I don't really want to go. Obviously we've been learning about the tracks and obviously everything about anatomy trains, but I always feel like we're cheating when we say that because we just went over it. But just learning about the continuous and is it uncontinuous or discontinuous nature of the tracks. So the fact that so basically what the rules we just went over. So I guess that's 2. And what else? The planes. I was quite happy about going over that. Just the fact that sagittal, frontal, and transverse is about how the body, the movement of the body rather than the actual direction we perform it in. So compression, pull, push, and rotation. So yeah, that was cool. You're muted.
Compression, extension, forward, back, rotation, side to side. Cool. Rian, what did you learn?
I don't want to copy what George just said.
Tough.
Okay, so I've basically learned that in order to create balance and to continuously improve, you need to take care of not only one, but all 3 of the holistic nets.
Yes. Very
not just one. Yeah, not just one, but you have to take care of all 3 in its continuous process to get to have therapy done on all 3 of those. And then I kind of I learned a lot about tracks and what they are. I didn't even know they existed.
Same.
So I learned about tracks and how muscles run in different tracks, but then the muscles that run in the same tracks, how different muscles or different I don't know the correct scientific word, but how one muscle that may be excessively toned might have or will have an effect on another muscle that runs in the same track. Okay. Yes, and then something you just said was
very important to remember that. That's a very good point. It's a very important point. But it's not even just the whole muscle. It can be myofascia within the band of the muscle. It can be a small, like for example, the rectus abdominis. I'm going to take myself as an example. My girlfriend did release work on my rectus abdominis. How often do you go to a sports massage therapist and do release work on the rectus abdominis?
Never.
Why not? Have you ever felt the position of your rectus abdominis? Most people's are shifted. A lot of people's are not central.
Mine shifted.
You cause a release of the rectus abdominis, as well as a release of the sternalis, not the pectoral, but the sternalis. it actually allows for components in the deep frontal line that control and regulate diaphragmatic action to breathing to become more consciously aware. And that there can have one contusion on your rec abs, right? Not the whole muscle, one point where you may have overstrain or where the tissue is in a braced safety position. If you can cause release on, it can cause you to breathe better. Very important to remember. What
Okay.
else?
I kind of have two more, but like one is not something I learned, but it's something you guys you spoke about, and that's like time determines a positive and a negative effect, basically. Like time is the main factor, but then in order to determine tracts, you need to look at where the bony stations are, and that's how you
Other way around.
better.
Other way around.
Okay, so in order to determine the stations, you need to look at
Where the tracks are.
okay, look where the tracks are. Okay.
Isn't the bony prominence, I thought the same thing as Rian, isn't the bony prominences how we guide ourselves to find the tracks?
Yeah, I'm sure it's like that in the document as well.
Okay, show me. Where in the document?
I'm going to go there now. Yeah, rule 2. Tracks are tracked down at bony stations or attachments.
So you said the muscle, you said, sorry, just repeat what you said before.
Okay, so
You said the bony prominences are tracks, or did you say they're stations?
No, they are stations.
Bony
so,
prominences are
yeah.
stations. And then
Yes.
the myofascia is tracks,
Yes.
are tracks. Did I say the opposite?
Yeah, kind of.
Oh, sorry. No, you're right. Oh, sorry, I misunderstood what you were saying.
But, yeah, okay, let me just put it better. So in order to identify the tracks, you need to look at where the bony stations are.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I got. Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. That's right. Sorry, I just understood wrong when you were saying it back to me. Sorry.
Yeah, I didn't put it the same way. Yeah.
No, but no, you're right, 100%. So the stations, basically so the tracks run along to a station. Next track will run along to another station, right? Now, where the stations are, where the bony prominences are, where the tracks are the myofascia in between. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Anything else?
No, that was 4.
Oh, perfect. Hook, 3 things you learned today, please, sir.
The different myofascial lines. So if at one part of the body get more restricted, it affects like one other part of the body, maybe in a real other in other area along the myofascial tract. If you make a change there, it affects the brain as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it affects the neural net as well, and the circulatory net as well. So if you treat a problem, you have to look at all the 3 components.
Mm-hmm.
Very important that I learned, and I need to learn a lot more about that one. Okay, I already knew that the fascial net has a lot to do with proprioception. Then this can change very quickly. For example, it's the first to respond. So with actually a neurological problem or if something happens, it reacts immediately on the myofascia.
That's true.
That's what
no, it's true. 100%.
That's what I have.
Yeah, emotion can dictate motion, and motion can dictate emotion. Very important. That is very, very. That is very accurate. what you just said?
So what I noticed, the biggest mistake I made myself. Sometimes you feel a muscle really hypertonic, and you think maybe the fascia is very tight, but this is actually the brain telling the fascia that it needs to be very tight. That's what happened this week with my knees.
Yep.
So from one point to another point, my muscles got like really tight in the I think it was the spiral line. So that's what I looked up. So it was quite a long time ago that I studied the myofascial tracks. I forgot a bit.
It could be a combination of multiple lines as well. Like it could be a component of the spiral line that obviously is affecting up through the adductors, or it could also be a component on your lateral line as well,
lateral line,
which could be affecting your obliques structures. But the spiral line also has an effect on the obliques. But it could be a combination of all two. But I think more likely, having seen your structure, it's more likely to be the spiral line, because when you're, sorry to put you out, this call you as an example, but when you are in a better balanced position with your biometrics in the morning, the position of your nipples is more evenly aligned. However, when you're more sympathetically exposed, your right nipple is lower than your left, which tells me that the whole thoracic cage is rotating over into itself, which would be indicative of a spiral line malfunction, causing a lateral line dysfunction. So that, but it could be, what I'm trying to say is for you, yes, probably spiral line, but it could be a combination of multiple lines. But you got to think about which line has a higher precedence of a priority that we have to consider making a myofascial adjustment to.
It was not pleasant, but it was actually when I have a full distortion of the body, it actually is a big learning process, because then I'm like, oh man, I'm like jammed everywhere, and so it's actually a good thing to start learning about about the enemy trains as well. I have the book here in front of me.
You know what? You can shout out to me, because when we start up in August, you're coming on with the one-on-one as well. So we have an hour every week after we've done a module to go over it. So just make questions, like read the book, write down your questions, send it to me, and then we'll have a full-on one-to-one mentorship to go over too. Perfect. Anything else that you wanted to?
Yes.
Yo.
Me. You said you were going to tell me why you never give me leg curls, any type of leg curl movement, and why and then the reason, because my quads are so tight.
Okay.
So let me hear it. I've been waiting 2 weeks for this.
Right. Let's go into the PDF and the superficial backline. Okay. So you guys can see all the bony stations. Don't worry about that. The postural function, prevention, flexion to fetal position, very important. Postural dominance. Okay. Now, point 3 in postural function. What does it read there, Ian?
In the backline. In the
superficial backline. Yep. Postural function, point 3.
Assist cruciate ligament in fixed position of knees. Maintains postural alignment between tibia and femur.
Right. Now.
Okay. Yeah, that's point
okay.
3.
I want you to go to now. I want you to read point 3 of key points of consideration, please.
Okay. When the knee is locked, when the knee is locked, both myofascia of the lower leg and of the thigh junction together.
Yep. Work together. Sorry, I did this. This document was hard to put together because there was a lot of stuff.
Okay.
I was working on 16 hours there. Now, number 4, please.
Okay. When the knee is flexed, myofascia of the thigh and the lower leg function separately.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hold on. When the knee is flexed, myofascia of the thigh and the lower leg function separately.
Okay. Now, next line.
Okay. If one myofascial compartment is restricted, it will influence the ability of the knee to flex. Yay! Finally.
Why do I not get you to do leg curls, direct neck curls? Why do I get you to utilize Nordic curls as an example? Because Nordic curls, you are causing plantar flexion, encouraging stretch of what? The gastrocs, as well as that of the hamstrings and the whole line. How tight are your gastrocs?
Pretty tight.
If I didn't give you a counter surface to cause compression and stretching the gastrocs whilst flexing your knee, what do you think is going to happen to the medial lateral head of your hamstrings?
It's probably not even going to work.
They're not going to get full contraction because one myofascial component of the line is tight and restricted, which means the opposite line will not get full flexion in the knee. How high, when you do a leg curl, how high can you flex a lever to your bum?
It's actually embarrassing because it's not very high.
When you do a Nordic curl or a glute ham raise, how high can you raise your body up into knee flexion?
Very high, yeah.
How much hamstring flexion do you think you're getting from a GHD as opposed to a leg curl in your example?
Probably 80% more.
Really?
It's not to say that leg curls are bad for you. It's just to say that it's to say leg curls are bad for you, given your myofascial position, but it's not to say that leg curls are bad for everyone.
Yeah. No, George, it's bad for me, eh? Like when I do a lying leg curl, I don't even get halfway.
Really?
It's not because there's anything wrong with the hamstrings. There's nothing wrong with the hamstrings.
Now that you point that out, it makes sense though, with the tightness of the fascia in the lower leg.
I don't even get 90 degrees. Yeah.
That's why I've never given you any curls, prone curls, ever. Or single leg curls, or any of that. I won't, because your calves are the fascia around your calves are too tight for you. But it will improve over time, or it might not. Sometimes, there's also morphological changes that occur that you can't really shift. But it doesn't mean you can't get the muscle to grow.
Yeah.
But it has to be taken into consideration. Every variable matters, guys. When you guys have been working with me for quite some time on the Gamut project, hope you've been with me recently on the Gamut project. How much improvement of mobility and function have you all noticed in your training?
Yeah, quite. Yeah.
You know why? Because every variable. When I look at your pictures every morning, I always think to you guys, if you get to send me torso pictures, I'm always like, send me your torso picture. It's not because I want to perv, because I'm not interested in men. Even though I'm interested in women, I don't even perv over my female clients because I have a beautiful girlfriend that loves me. But very, very important, I look at the bony landmarks, which are called the what? Stations. The stations and how they affect the tracks and whether or not a track is going to become broken or it's going to become refined to take on a huge train. Okay, a lot of factors. So the document, I really want to just go over 2 more points. I told you about the point about the different myofascia. Now, plantar fascia.
Plantar fascia.
The release of the plantar fascia can cause a massive global effect of stability throughout the all.
I think you broke your mic now.
Yeah.
Concha, you broke your mic.
Can you hear me?
There you go.
All trades, okay? So, if plantar fascia is tight and bound, it can displace the position of the subtalar joint, let alone all the phalanges and the tarsals, okay? If the position of the subtalar joint is displaced, the position of the lateral malleoli to the position of the back of the calcaneus, and then once again from the malleoli to the position of the fifth metatarsal base, becomes distorted. What you're looking for there is, if you think about the foot, okay? So we think about the foot, okay? So there we got the calcaneus, and there we have the fifth metatarsal base. And here we have the lateral malleoli, okay? Those 3 points. And then these are the toes that come out there. What you're looking for is a ratio of either 1 to 3 or maximum 1 to 4. If this ratio distorts and all of a sudden your subtalar joint shifts into the actual tibial junction, and you have a 1 to 5 equals anterior pelvic tilt. Anterior pelvic tilt equals thoracic flexion, which is kyphosis. Okay, and kyphosis can lead on to excessive lordosis, which can lead on to vagus issues of the knees, or valgus issues of the knees. Shall I go on? Release of the plantar fascia is probably the easiest thing to do for anyone. All it requires is a good ball, okay, with enough tension, not a tennis ball. Please don't use tennis balls. When I see people trying to release the plantar fascia with a tennis ball, I have to laugh. There isn't enough tension in a tennis ball to create any effect in the plantar fascia.
Crush that.
Yeah. Huh?
Crush that tennis ball.
It's like, really? It's got the same consistency as the sole of your shoe. And the sole of your shoe doesn't release the plantar fascia. Tennis ball's not going to release it either.
Yeah, we use hockey balls at the gym. We do it before every session. Oh, there you go.
Hockey ball, perfect. Lacrosse ball, perfect. Those are the surfaces you want to use. You don't want to use a tennis ball.
Mm.
You know?
I actually like also the end of a bar, because you can actually.
It's hardcore, brother.
I find you can stand on it, not the tip, but like the thicker bit where the plates are put, so you can actually stand on it and put some real pressure on there without feel like it's going to go through your foot. Whereas the ball, it's like super painful.
The ball
that makes sense.
Yeah, respect, George.
But the ball works better.
All right, then I'll try.
Why does the ball work better?
Cute. It's more accurate.
What's below the ball? That's not below the bar.
The floor.
You have a hard counteractive surface that can apply more direct force. Remember? Accuracy, impulse, force reception. Even comes down to plantar fascia rolling. All right.
It's funny though. Speaking of plantar fascia, I have those Vivo barefoot shoes, not the 5 toes, but the ones that have no sole on them.
Yeah.
And the ones I have, there somewhere. I ran in the rain one day and they smell weird. Like the inside's fine, but the outside smells weird, and I'm a bit self-conscious of wearing them in the gym. So I haven't been wearing them for ages. And I bought these big Nikes, like the Metcons that you use for CrossFit. And I started getting weird tightness, and I didn't really think much of it. But then I started wearing these Vivos again and running in them. And I've been taking it easy with the running just because obviously I don't want to jump into barefoot running all of a sudden. But I do feel better. My feet feel better. Like I don't know. I feel like they're just, I don't know if I'm just stretching out every time I walk, or if just the biotintegritiously or whatever. I'm just more sound because of the way I'm walking now, instead of having to heel plant so much. Like I'm actually flowing more with my walk, if that makes sense.
It does. But remember one thing though. Remember we mentioned before about a functional training stimulus, right? Same thing over here. Walking in barefoot shoes, like Vivo barefoot technology shoes, might be cool for you because you can handle the stimulus. Wouldn't be cool for me. I can't. I'm 125 kilos, right?
I'm like 115, bro.
Are you really?
At least no, close. I'm like 95 or something.
But yeah, so you got to think about the person, the environment, the scenario, and the stimulus. So Vivo shoes might be a great stimulus for you, not a great stimulus for me. So I use Converse. I wear Converse. It's a flat sole. It's not the best. It's not as good as Vivo. Definitely not for perception. But if I were to go completely barefoot with tight plantar fascia, 125 kilos.
A lot. But I find I like breaks from it too. Like, for example, today I did 8 rounds instead of 10 because I could feel my plantar fascia starting to pull a little bit. And I thought, and as I was on the concrete, I thought I'd pull back a little bit. But
remember, time of exposure.
Exactly. And it's I have no money at the moment, so I can't get them. But when I'm trying to save up to get some Nike Free or something, so they're supposed to be really flexible, but they still have that padding underneath, just to give my foot a break sometimes, because I'm not a barefoot runner. I'm not used to it yet. Like, I like the exposure on a daily basis, but not necessarily all day.
No, not constant exposure. No, definitely not. I think that's where people go wrong. That's why I don't like cults. That's why I said to you before. I don't like when they say, "Tell me, come to our special elite family or our tribe." I'm like, I don't want to be a part of anyone's tribe, and I have my own family. Thank you very much. I'm not interested, because this is the thing, right? Everyone takes everything to the extreme. Barefoot technology. Wear barefoot shoes all day long. Make sure your knees disintegrate into your pelvis. No, dude, I'm not knocking barefoot technology. I think it's great, but it's a time of exposure to anything. All right, if you've been wearing shoes your whole life, what do you think the morphological changes are going to have happened? You think you're just going to change them by putting on a new pair of shoes that aren't, padded? It's not at all. If you were taught how to walk in a certain way, with a certain type of gait, and the next minute, you see someone having like an antelope prance, and they say, that's how you used to walk now, while they follow the antelope prance, and you're like, antelope prance, antelope prance. Do you think your body's going to like that? No,
not a little bit. No.
Not at all. Time of exposure. You're shifting anything. It needs gradual time of exposure, right? Is anything that happens, any dramatic change you can occur in one release, one alteration. Error with caution. There's a lot of caution. Okay, if you shift anything 180 degrees, okay, if your body and your physiology is a big freight train, sorry, not freight train, truck, a big hauling truck, a big Mack truck, right? And it's got a load of stuff on the back. And all of a sudden, you want to change direction to how your truck is going along the road. And you turn your wheel 180 degrees. What's going to happen to that truck?
All kinds of stuff's going to flip.
It's going to flip over, all right? And your body's going to flip out. Small changes are better because you can adapt to them. Small amount of time of exposure is better because you can adapt to it. Spending 2 hours in the gym is a waste of time. Why? Because it's too much. Body can't adapt to it unless you're like some genetic freak on steroids.
I spent 3 at least. I like to save all the workouts you give me, and I do them all in one day, and just do that over again.
Yeah, that's not smart.
Yeah. Full body workout every day.
Yeah, that's why I use Tabata timers. Use the Tabata timer for your workouts, right?
Oh, dude, it's a game changer, the Tabata timer. I know I've been saying something for a while, but it's such a game changer. Especially I use it with clients now, and it's just like it's so much easier.
Way better. Way better. Way better.
I can't believe how much easier it is. You don't even have to interrupt the talk. If they're talking, you're like, oh, the watch is going.
Exactly. Especially when people come to you for psychological sessions. There's nothing wrong with being a confidant, but there's something wrong with being a fake psychologist, right? Like I did a study. So I studied NLP, a little bit of NLP, and I can have like a one-to-one session, not when I'm training someone. If someone's coming to me for exercise, I'm not there to talk about their boyfriend not buying them flowers.
Yeah.
I don't care about your boyfriend not buying flowers. You're supposed to do squats.
Did I tell you I'm a psychologist expert? I told you guys, right?
No way. No.
The 3 modules, remember that?
Jeez. That's it. So it gives a good point. Cool. All right. So besides the plantar fascia, very important. Read up about the plantar fascia, guys. So I say, I'll read you what I wrote. Plantar fascia, if the inner aspect of the plantar fascia is short, one will note a lift off the surface of the medial inner surface. In other words, inversion. Okay, so your foot will become like a hook claw. If the outer aspect is short, one will notice the toe pulls up toward the small toe pulls up toward the lateral malleoli. In other words, arches will collapse. Release of tension in the plantar fascia plays an integral role with the subtalus in establishing appropriate weight shift throughout the entire superficial back line. And the superficial back line probably has the greatest amount of correspondence with all the other lines as well, apart from that of the deep front line. Okay, so change the superficial back line's function. It's going to change the functionality of a lot of other lines too. In other words, roll out your plantar fascia if it's tight. Okay, don't be such a sissy. Get the hockey ball. Okay, now I want to go down a bit into not the spiral line. Okay, the rhomboserratus muscle. Okay, they actually connect continuously along a fascial tract, the rhomboid and the serratus. They only have a blade of the scapula intersecting their track of connection. But if you took the scapula away, you would find that the muscle doesn't fall away from one another. They conjoin with one another. Because of that, the muscle has potential to create imbalance in both medial and lateral and side-to-side discrepancy shifts if the tone between the opposing lines of tensions are not sustained. Now, a common pattern with the rhomboserratus muscle is when the rhomboids are locked long, in other words, like a bodybuilder, and the serratus is locked short, pulling the scapula into an elevated and medially rotated position. By lengthening the serrati, so by doing, basically if you had someone push into between your ribs and try to pull your lats behind you and hold that lock, and whilst they're holding that lock, you squeeze your shoulder blades together. By doing that, it will alleviate a medially rotated and elevated scapula.
What do you mean between your ribs?
Yeah, so if someone does there, so the lat, that section there, where the lat is, so there, let's pop my lat there. So you push in there, and they hold. You can do it both sides or one side. And we'll talk about that in a second as well. You can hold in that lock, and whilst that lock's there, you, not the therapist, you pull you try to retract your shoulder blades while they hold the lock on the serrati. Now, hemispherical symmetry. You might find that one serrati is tight and another rhomboid is tight. If you're imbalanced, if your right and left hemispheric interaction isn't balanced, and you're over-utilizing one hemisphere more than the other, more likely to find discrepancies behind how the muscles interact. So I may have serrati short here, but long here. In other words, I may have to release tension on the rhomboids. And how do I do that? You compress tissue from the spinous process. So the spine is going down here, right? And we have a scapula coming through here, right? And the rhomboids there, okay? What I do is I push the tissue this way whilst I elevate, if this is a rib cage, from here, there's a rib cage, right? Whilst I'm elevating the rib cage, I push the tissue, the rhomboids are, that way toward the scapula, and that will lengthen them. So, funnily enough, I don't have good hemispherical symmetry. Unfortunately, in balance because of surgery and what have you, but I am pretty balanced considering in other ways. Yeah.
What does that even mean?
I don't know. What does it mean, George? Why are you laughing? Why are you laughing, George? Obviously, you know what that means. So, for me, I would have to lengthen the lock serrati on my right and lengthen the rhombo serrati on my left to create balance. along the, what line is this I'm talking about? The spiral line, which is what Hub would also have to do, by the way. He has a similar pattern to me. Serrati's locked short on one side, rhomboids are locked short on the other. So in order to open up the rhomboids, you've got to push them, elevate. Someone has to compress, and you have to elevate and extend the ribs for the rhomboids. Serrati, they push the serrati in, and then you retract the shoulder blades. So they push in the serrati. Before you try to retract it, then push into the serrati as much as you can, and then you retract the shoulder blades.
One thing I've noticed with you, Justin, when you do some of the tissue work before my training session, is you, and it's the same thing you mentioned now, that the therapist will hold the serrati in place and you have to retract. So what's the reason that you always incorporate, like, I don't know, like a movement element into that? Because that's something I've noticed, like you tell the patient, they have to do a certain movement while you hold a muscle. Is it to like activate the muscle almost?
You don't have to always, but it's better if you can, because there's a far stronger neural link that will be created during active myofascial pull with your, rather than passive. So passive myofascial pull will not encourage as much motor neuron activity as opposed to active. So when you encourage a person to move their body whilst you're holding a certain lock, you increase active myofascial pull, which will integrate a far stronger lock between the peripheral and the central compartment of the nervous system. Cool. One more, and then we're done for the night. Because we're way over. Way over it. And I haven't even touched on 10% of the document. This document's very good. Please read over it. And if you want to book in a one-to-one, you guys know the deal. Happy to do it. Just let me know, and we can do that at some point.
Ja. Moet je eigenlijk nog niet naar...
Okay. Now, there are 4 segments of the arm lines. You have 2 superficial segments and 2 deep lines. The rotators affect the upper arm. So the rotator cuff musculature, okay, affects the upper arm and the hand. Prime movers, being that of the lats, deltoids, pectorals, affect the shoulder and the lower arm, believe it or not. So the strength of your a capable grip would be determined on the available activity you may have in your pectorals and your lats. And the rate at which you're able to grow or hypertrophy your biceps or triceps will be dependent on the active range of control you may have within your rotator cuff group.
That makes sense, at least with my experience from recent.
This is why I have such an issue with CrossFit communities saying they never train arms. They never train arms. Now, I'm all for training arms correctly. I'm also not for training arms like most bodybuilders do, unfortunately. Most bodybuilders do not incorporate full extension through the elbow, all right? So they'll do partial extension in the eccentric range, and they'll start flexing up the bicep again. And they don't even fully extend doing tricep movements. They always go to there, and back down, right? And it's never a lock at any point. As soon as you stop fully extending the elbow in either bicep or tricep movements, you start to impair the functionality between the medial and lateral rotators in the shoulder as well.
So
just if you do not, so I'll tell you again, Hub, if you do not incorporate full extension of the elbow, either during eccentric load of the bicep or concentric contraction through the tricep, but you do momentary, partial full extension of the elbow, you will affect the functionality between the medial and the lateral rotator cuffs in your shoulder.
So can you make the shoulder then better by training full
Elbow extension.
yeah.
100%. Don't worry so much. Everyone's focused. I'm not training the arms. Everyone's so far more focused on the position of the scapula than the position of where the elbow ends up. Everyone's like, keep the scapulas down and do this. Everyone's doing this and all the tensions on the neck. And I don't know where my elbow is anymore because guess what? That muscle mass that's closer to your spinal column is going to have a higher order of proprioception. And if you stress a muscle that's closer to your spinal column, do you think you're going to be able to proprioceptively be aware of your periphery or your appendicular structures?
No.
So no. No. So if you can't, I absolutely detest that. I see so many structural balance movement specialists. They train people with weights like pull the shoulders back and down, concentrate on the shoulders back. And the guy's trying to train his biceps and his triceps, all right? But he's doing this. No, like your purpose of the movement is to train the forearm flexors or the elbow flexors or extensors. Yes, the scapula has a part to play because they have a crossover into the rotator cuff. We know that. But first, concentrate on full extension, active contracted extension, or eccentric control of extension of the elbow. Don't worry about your scapulars if you can't even get full extension of the elbow. You're wasting your bloody efforts. It drives me up the wall.
Wait, so you're saying to not care about the scapula at all? Surely it should play some part.
Look, if you're doing this,
Yeah.
worry about the scapula. But if your scapula is here and I'm doing this, there's not much movement happening, right, in the scapula. Stable. In other words, it's stable. But is it in the most optimal position? Is it as depressed as it possibly can go? No, it's not. But if I try to do this and then flex and extend my elbow, what's straining right now? My neck, my SCM, my elevated scap, my medial scalenes, and they also all tie into compressive elements of the occipital star, which lies behind the suboccipital region. And that part of the musculature within our myofascial structure is highly responsible for vision and receipt of MRF, mesencephalon reticular formation. And with poor MRF, because of stress to those tissues, you are also going to exhibit poor PMRF, pontomedullary receptor facilitation, which means that your structural awareness of the hemispheres is going to become distorted. So by doing this, you're distorting your understanding of where your body is, not being able to contract muscle effectively. I'm not saying that your scapula flop around like a club seal. That's what I'm not saying. I'm very much against animal cruelty, and particularly animal cruelty that is seen in the human body. What I'm saying, position the scapula in the most comfortable position that does not strain the musculature of your neck whilst you're trying to train the arms. Okay? Right here, I'm comfortable. If I do this, I'm not. I'm tensing. If I do this, I'm also overstretching. Here's my nice neutral position. I brace and I work. That's it. I can change the angle of flexion, angle of extension. But if I want to get a greater range here, I'm not going to do it whilst trying to train my arms. What would be a better exercise to focus on increasing the range here? Which no one does anymore because some coaches talked about upper trap dominance.
Well, upright rows.
Upright rows is one. What's another one? Dumbbell shrugs. Nobody does shrugs anymore, right? Nobody does shrugs. Everyone's like, no, upper trap dominance. You shouldn't do shrugs. Yes, if you do this, okay, that's bad. It's like anything else. The way you perform an exercise can be beneficial or detrimental. Dumbbell or shrugs. You're going to actively shorten, increasing proprioception, whilst actively lengthening. Contraction equals better relaxation. Very simple kinesiology, the relationship between muscle spindles and Golgi tendon organs. Contract, relax. If I'm actively contracting and controlling extension, is the angle between my acromion and my suboccipital region not going to, look, just watch me, guys. Just watch me for a second. Okay, note where my shoulders are right now. I'm relaxed. Okay, note my lower lobe, the lower lobe of my ear. Okay, and note the acromion over here. Okay, can you see that position?
Yeah.
Right. I'm not going to even use weight. I want you to notice that position. Okay, note that where that is right now. It's about the distance, probably of my index finger to my thumb. Okay, that's the line. So it's drawing, it's about that much distance. Okay, I'm going to do 5 reps. So I'm actively going to elevate, and I'm actively going to depress. And as I'm trying to depress, I'm lifting my rib cage up. And I'm going to do 2 more after this one. And 1 more after this one. And the last one. Okay. Where's my clavicle now to my earlobe?
What was that?
Look at the difference. Look at the difference. That's the difference. So what is going to work to create scapular depression? Focusing on squeezing the hell out of my scapulars while doing bicep curls, or just focusing on doing dumbbell shrugs correctly? What would be a good call of measure? You got a client that has elevated scaps, right? And you want to do biceps with them. And instead of trying to force them to over-consider depressing the scapula whilst doing forearm, elbow flexion, why not get them to do 2 or 3 sets of dumbbell shrugs prior to doing curls? Guess what? The muscle won't be stressed and the scapula will be depressed. You can focus more energy on your biceps.
But that's because you're saying the intent of the eccentric portion of the shrug will allow it to relax, will allow it for the shoulders to depress.
Active contraction enables active relaxation. Okay? If you don't actively contract, if I just do this, I'm actively contracting, or is it just a response? How much active proprioception do I have in this as opposed to squeezing and down?
Yeah, but it's that down bit that I'm saying I'm noticing the difference. It's like, is it just, so what you're doing with the active contraction is that you're controlling the movement on the concentric portion, or is as well as the eccentric, or is it mostly the eccentric?
You do both. Both. You always control the movement.
No, I know, but the difference is that the fact that that it's both, or
it's both. It's both.
Yeah.
You won't be able to get as much control through the eccentric unless you get maximal short end range contraction in the concentric. So the more you're able to shorten the muscle actively in its contraction, the longer you will be able to lengthen the muscle as well.
Okay.
That's why you gave me a full ab workout when my abs were so tight. And
Yes.
I wondered, why is he giving me this big ab workout when my abs were so tight? And then the next day I was fine.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly. Okay. So, right. Cool. That's I think. Let me see. But it. I want to go over
So that's.
more.
So just I think I need to go in a bit.
That's right. We're going to finish up now anyway. So I'm going to do one more and then we're done. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. This is very important. The last one. Okay. Psoas. This is the one. All right. So the psoas has superior and inferior fibers. What do you think the psoas does to the lumbar region? Do you think it helps with extension or flexion?
Flexion.
Okay, good answer. That's what's out there in the literature. What do you think?
Could be both.
Rian?
I'm not sure where we are right now.
Don't worry about that. I'm asking you. What do you think the psoas does as a hip flexor? What do you think it does? Extension or flexion of the lumbar spine?
Yeah.
Flexion.
Okay, and you said both, hey, George?
Yeah,
Why do you say both, George?
because it's a hip flexor, so it should have some account to flexor, but also it's a postural muscle in extension of the hips. So I don't know if that would
Is it
designate
extension of
that.
the hips or flexion of the hips? What is it known as, a hip flexor or hip extensor?
Yeah, the hip flexor, but for example, in the squat with the hip extension, it's the postural muscle, isn't it? It's active. It's active in the sense that
You're right, it is both. You're right, but it comes to, when we talk about anatomical traits, the superior fibers of the psoas actually help with active, so superior fiber help in lumbar flexion, okay? And the inferior fibers help with lumbar extension. You know when? Inferior fibers come into play during deep hip flexion. So in deep hip flexion, the psoas switches its role from being that of a flexor to an extensor.
I saw like in the bottom of the squat.
The bottom of the squat, it becomes an extensor. Where the top of the squat, it's a flexor.
Gee.
Because it's the alignment between its attachments. Where's the psoas attached to?
It's in the tuberosity, the front.
That's the trochanter,
Trochanter, not tuberosity. Sorry, my bad.
right? And it originates onto the transverse processes of
T. Is it T? No.
L3 to 4. 3 to 5.
1 to 5.
1 to 5.
Sometimes T12 in some people, but not only about 51% population. So in hip flexion, the position of the coccyx changes, does it not? The sacrum, position of the sacrum changes during hip flexion to the position of the ilium. In other words, it opens. Okay, and it opens to allow more room into the hip itself during flexion of the hip. Otherwise, tissue won't be able to compress properly. The hips open. As the hips open, so too does it change its line of pull through its myofascial linkage to the coccyx. And that's why it becomes an extensor in the bottom of hip flexion. How cool is that?
It's bad.
Amazing.
That's where you make the mistake, or people make the mistake of trying to oversimplify things, and it just doesn't work in the other side. It's not. Yeah, it's crazy.
Right, guys, I'm going to call it a night. Does everybody have any questions before I go?
I'm looking forward to reading the rest of it. But
Please do. It took me a lot of effort. Really, this is probably the hard. Like I always say this, but this was the hardest one to put together because there's so much. Not because it's as complicated as others. No, it's not complicated. It's just so much, so many variables that form part of its design. So many variables, unreal. So please read it. Hope you'll be with us in August for Series 2, and you'll obviously be able to have one-to-one time with me as well for an hour every week after each mentorship. So we can go over it then as well if you like. Rest of you guys, read it. Send me a question here or there if you want. If you want an hour, we can organize it, but I'll have to charge small rate for that hour because I have very limited hours in the day. But I'm happy to help if you need some more help with this topic at hand. Okay. Did everybody enjoy it?
I did.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite ones so
Same.
far. Dude.
Same.
Do you find it informative, Hope?
Yes.
Fantastic.
Can I just, real quick, I just wanted to, I've got 5 little random facts. I mean, it's really random, but they're kind of whatever. It's nothing to do with what we're talking about. It's just things that happened to me today I thought you guys would find interesting. I met a legit Viking. Guy was fucking huge. He was blonde. Huge jack dude. But then thinking about it, compared to you, he wasn't that big. as I was saying it, I was just like, oh, he might actually not find him that impressive. And then I met a Cuban person, which I've never done before, and like, you know, it's random, but the guy was really cool. We spoke Spanish for a while. It was cool, but it's just, you know, you don't get to meet many people from Cuba because they just don't leave. Tom Bellac ran an 1850 minute 5K, which I thought was really impressive.
Wow.
Yeah. And actually it's only 4. I wanted to talk to you. It's more of a silly interest, but like my dog, she's a Staffy Collie, and this is really silly, okay? Just bear with me. She's more athletic than anything I've ever seen. Like she runs for, I think we counted 100 miles a week. 100 miles a week. Because we put a tracker on her, and she's faster. She's almost as fast as a whippet or like a greyhound. She's like unreal in terms of athleticism, right? Like one of those like ridiculous pit bulls. And I just wanted to know how that works physiologically, because compared to them, I was looking at her, I don't understand it. So that's just those are my silly 4 facts of the day. Event of the day.
Well, it might be mitochondrial density is probably greater.
There you go.
Might have a greater density of mitochondrial.
Dude, it's ridiculous.
Mitochondria, both in her brain as well as in her muscle tissue.
Ask Tommy. Like when we hang out at the park, he's always like, "Dude, the dog's a freak." And it's just
It might just be more mitochondria, to be honest, and better like telomere structures to your DNA in being able to help.
connect.
But I don't know. I don't specialize in dogs. But
I know, it's really silly. I just thought you guys would.
I love it. Love it. Hello. Hello.
What's this? Oh, there we go.
All right, I gotta go, guys. I love you.
Thanks, Justin.
Love you, little girl. Hello, little girl.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Have a good one.
All right, have a good one. Thank you very much for attending. Please, guys, before you go, I need for everyone to post something up on their social media wall about the experience of the Banner Mentorship tonight, if you don't mind. And thank you, Riyam. And just tag either on Instagram, Hulk Enterprises Ltd, or on Facebook, the Online Gamma Project. Okay, so just add me to it, please. I appreciate it very much. Really trying to increase the awareness of this mentorship program, because I think a lot of trainers could benefit from it.
I might get you in contact with my physio. I think she'd do well on it.
Awesome.
All right.
We've got 2 spaces left, hey, George. So I reserved yours, and I reserved 3 others that are paying a little bit later as well. But we've only got 2 spaces left. So if she wants to come on board, have her contact me as soon as, because I have a few other people also trying to refer. So she doesn't have to pay straight off. I just need a reservation, because I'm only taking 12. I'm decided I'm not having any more than that this time around, because I want to give better service. And 12 people is enough just to educate in 12 weeks.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank you very much, guys. Have a good one.
Thanks.
See you.